that sometimes talented writers of fiction can reveal a truth, find a clarity that those of us who deal in sort of news, information, facts, evidence can't always find. Do you sometimes look at a human conflict like that and think, you know, I'd like to bring my novelist sensibility to it. I could do something with that. Maybe find a pathway to a truth there.
I do sometimes think about that, and certainly it's in my mind to write something. You know, I always try and find a different way into a subject. I think God knows that the situation in the Middle East is, you know, there is no other place in the world which has so many sacred sites in such a tiny area. I think that is always going to be extraordinarily difficult.
Naomi Alderman, it's been a pleasure having you on Hard Talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Hard Talk. I'm Jeff Goods. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Strange little musical interlude for a moment. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday Morning Show. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on that CBC Listen app, or on YouTube. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Marcy Marcusa, as mentioned, with our team here at the show. It is 3 minutes to 6 a.m., and in downtown Winnipeg, still wet and mild this morning, and our high today is going to be -2. Good morning to Brad Lillies, who's on our team this morning live. Good morning to Corey Funk, who's directing the program, and we'll be covering the commute on air. Good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's our technical producer on Information Radio, and we'll be covering the weather situation and the forecast today. We're on air with you till 8:37 a.m. Lots coming up on the show, but we always get started with finding out what has developed in news overnight in our province. So Heather Wells is here as well. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, we are going to hear an exclusive story from the Fifth Estate. 2 years ago, the Patel family, including their 11-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son, were found frozen on the Canada-U.S. border near Emerson. The family was trying to cross illegally into the U.S. They were taken there by human smugglers. Now, the Fifth Estate has tracked down one of the suspects Indian police say was there the night the Patels were taken to the border. So we'll hear that story on World Report and also locally. And a new queen was crowned in Winnipeg last night. Local drag artist Ruby Chopsticks there, lip-syncing before being chosen the first ever drag artist in residence by the Rainbow Resource Centre. We'll hear what happened there in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
In Winnipeg, I mentioned the temperature high, but the temperature currently is -5 today, right now, and we have snow grains being reported. So that just means it's going to look a little bit almost foggy or misty, but that's snow around, hanging around in the air. There is light snow falling, by the way, up in Churchill, and it's -20 there, and I mention it because that's your cold spot this morning in Manitoba. Well, in the first hour of the show, we're going to hear about what's going on at this year's New Music Festival. Looking forward to hearing about that. In addition, we're going to dig into the idea of workplace wellness. We're going to hear what that means and how office culture can be improved with proper management, and maybe not other wellness extras that have become trendy over the last number of years. There's some new thinking that those things might not be landing with employees. And we'll get the lay of the land when it comes to EVs.
On Cue with Tom Power. Kim Twee's best-selling novel Rue has now been made into a film. Rue is based on Kim's own life story of fleeing with her family during the Vietnam War. She'll be here to talk about what it was like to step back into the rooms she left as a kid.
I didn't know how, but I thought I was in Saigon.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Report. This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm John Northcott. A panel of United Nations judges is set to deliver a highly anticipated ruling today. They could decide to order Israel to suspend its military operations in the Gaza Strip. South Africa is accusing Israel of state-led genocide against Palestinians as it wages war against Hamas militants. Our correspondent Chris Brown brings us the latest from Jerusalem.
Israel's government has called the South African complaint grossly distorted, and on the eve of the ruling, spokesman Elon Levy was projecting confidence that Israel's actions in Gaza would be vindicated.
We have expected, of course, to throw out the completely absurd and ridiculous charges pressed by South Africa.
The International Court of Justice, the UN's highest court, could indeed decide the South African claims have no merit, ending the case. But if a majority of the 17 judges decide the case should proceed, the court could also impose interim measures as a sort of restraining order. South African lawyers have asked for a ceasefire and an order to provide more humanitarian aid to Gaza. A Hamas spokesman says the militant group will abide by any ceasefire ruling and will release hostages it captured during the October 7th attacks if Israel releases Palestinians it has detained. The health ministry in Gaza says more than 25,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks since the war began. This case could have momentous implications for how Israel pursues the war and for countries such as the United States that are already under pressure for not doing more to prevent the terribly high death toll in Gaza. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
In this country, CBC News has learned Kenneth Law is facing at least one upgraded charge of first-degree murder. The Ontario man is accused of helping people take their own lives. Law is suspected of being connected to dozens of deaths around the world. Thomas Daigle has the latest.
It's not clear how many charges will be upgraded, but CBC News has confirmed Kenneth Law is now facing at least one charge of first-degree murder in connection with a death in Ontario. Until now, the former Toronto hotel cook was charged with both second-degree murder and counseling or aiding suicide in connection with 14 deaths across the province. Law has been in custody since last May after investigators said he sold a toxic substance and items for self-harm. Now authorities appear to be again taking a new approach to this case. Peel Regional Police declined to provide any details last night. But in December, when police first added murder charges, lead investigator Inspector Simon James pointed to newly uncovered information.
We're constantly assessing evidence. It's a very ongoing investigation. I can't speak to that evidence at this time to preserve the investigation.
Law's products are suspected of being connected to at least 124 deaths in Canada, the U.S., Britain, Italy, Ireland, New Zealand, and elsewhere. David Parfitt in England lost his son Tom in 2021.
There's a clear link with Law. He knew what he was doing when he sent my son a suicide kit.
The new first-degree murder charge means Ontario authorities consider Law carried out a homicide that was both planned and deliberate. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
The execution of Kenneth Smith took 22 minutes as the state of Alabama carried out his death sentence. Last night's execution, the first time nitrogen gas has been used for capital punishment anywhere. Journalist Steve Futterman is in Washington. Steve, a lot of concern that this could be a painful death for Smith. What do we know about how the execution went?
Well, John, despite pleas by those opposed to the death penalty, even one by the UN Human Rights Office, the execution took place last night, Kenneth Smith becoming the first person to be executed using this nitrogen gas method. Now, Smith was strapped down on a gurney. A mask was placed over his face. Then the nitrogen began being administered. According to witnesses, it took several minutes for Smith to become unconscious. Now, that was a bit controversial because Alabama officials had predicted it would happen within seconds, but it did not. He struggled during the process. The Alabama Department of Corrections Commissioner John Hamm spoke after the execution.
It appeared that Smith was holding his breath as long as he could, and then there's also information out there. He struggled against his restraints a little bit, but there's some involuntary movement and some agonal breathing, so that was all expected.
Now, Steve, Elizabeth Sennett, the woman that Smith was convicted of murdering, what has her family's reaction been?
Well, her son Michael came to the execution site as well. He had been talking for days, and I would say in a very respectful tone. He has said he has long forgiven Kenneth Smith, and he described the last few days as anything but joyful.
Nothing happened here today is going to bring Mom back. We're not going to be jumping around, hooping and hollering, hooray and all that, but we're glad this day is over.
And John, this debate over using nitrogen in executions is not over. It's going to be debated for some time. And there are 2 other states here in the U.S. that have approved this same method. So we could see other similar executions in the future.
Reporter Steve Futterman in Washington. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, John.
A court in Kenya says a plan to send police officers on a UN mission to Haiti is unconstitutional. The initiative is aimed at tackling gang violence in Haiti. In the past year, nearly 5,000 people have been killed and 200,000 forced to flee their homes. Nearly 1,000 Kenyan officers were going to be deployed to Haiti as early as this month, but a Kenyan court has ruled police can only be sent overseas if there is a reciprocal arrangement with the host government. The Summer Games in Paris, just 6 months away. They're a way for the host city to make a splash on the world stage. And as Sasha Petrusik reports, the race is on to be ready on time.
A handful of swimmers braved the cold and contaminated Seine River in the heart of Paris. It's been declared too dangerous to swim in for a century.
Oui, ça c'est vraiment un rêve qu'on va réaliser.
The dream is back, says swimmer Pierre Fusseau, made real and urgent by this year's Olympics. The grand opening will feature a flotilla of athletes riding into Paris, and swimmers will compete here, if it can be cleaned up in time. The rush is on to build huge reservoirs to capture raw sewage that still flows in. Deputy Paris Mayor Pierre Rabadan. There is no plan B, he insists. It will be done. The iconic river's been enlisted to make the games more relevant to the ordinary person.
As they've grown to the gigantic size that they are, there has been a larger and larger disconnect.
Angela Schneider is an Olympic silver medalist in rowing.
And if you lose that connection, you've lost the purpose for the games.
Something Paris wants to fix before the flame is lit in 6 months. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally, electric vehicle drivers could be paying twice as much for the same charge depending on where they plug in. The latest findings by a team at CBC's Marketplace. Now, for the first time, this country's environment minister is hinting at some standardization. Charles Agro has that story.
We are charging. Plugging in. It's a common practice for an increasing number of Canadians to power up their electric vehicles at public charging stations like this one. But at what cost?
It's a patchwork of approaches still.
That, according to Joanna Kiriazis of Clean Energy Canada.
Well, we're still working out the kinks.
Kinks that include a range of billing practices, some by the minute, some by the hour, and about 25% of Canada's public chargers currently bill by the kilowatt hours. What experts, including Kiriazis, agree is the fairest. It ensures consumers are paying for the energy they get, not the time it takes.
Moving towards this more standardized approach helps consumers more easily compare pricing across different charging station providers.
Marketplace's own price comparison of fast chargers found prices ranging from 25 to 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Electricity prices vary across the country and are set by the provinces, but Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault says standardization would help consumers better compare prices.
Can we impose this on provinces and territories? I don't think so, but we can work with them to try and ensure that we have the most efficient system in terms of tarification across the country.
As Canada races toward a zero-emission future, Guilbeault admits this country's public charging infrastructure needs to catch up.
I want us to move faster, of course.
Charles Agro, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can watch the full Marketplace story tonight at 8 p.m., 8:30 in Newfoundland on CBC TV and CBC Gem. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, you can go to our website, including this hour. More on that Marketplace story on EVs. cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good Friday morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app or on YouTube. -4 in the city. Thanks for joining us. Well, we have lots to look forward to at the end of January. There's always a lot going on, including the New Music Festival. And if you're a fan, you want to hear all about this year's festival, stay tuned. We're going to do that in moments. In addition, we're going to talk workplace wellness this hour on the show. What does it mean? And how can office culture be improved with proper management instead of other ideas of what wellness has become to mean in the workplace? So we'll talk more about that at 6:20. And then at 10 to 7, you might have just heard a story on World Report about Canada and our all-electric vehicle future. The investigation from our colleagues at CBC Marketplace suggests that infrastructure is not quite ready yet to handle the EV demand. And Charles Diagro will have a full report coming up for us. One of the interesting things in that is she looked at the price per kilowatt hour on average that she found in Manitoba if you're plugging in your EV, and she looks at that compared to other prices across grids in other parts of Canada. So that'll be interesting to hear locally what she found as well. So she's on the show just ahead of 7 o'clock. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who's here with developing news.
Good morning. Well, the death of a restaurant owner in St. James has people in Winnipeg's hospitality industry talking about crime and safety. Police say Kyriakos Voyajakis died Wednesday after an altercation with a male outside his restaurant, the Cork and Flame on Portage Avenue. They haven't released any details about what might have led to the fight. We're going to hear some reaction coming up. As well, the cousin of a First Nations woman whose remains are believed to be in a Winnipeg area landfill says it's time for the mayor to step up. Police say the bodies of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris are believed to be in the Prairie Green landfill. Well, Melissa Robinson, Harris's cousin, wants the city and the mayor to deliver on a promise made months ago. We'll hear what that promise was and what Scott Gillingham says he'll do about it in our next local news at 6:30.
Okay, Heather Wells.
Yes.
Corey Funk.
Yes.
Sorry, Corey's getting his mic on and I'm all like, Corey Funk. Good morning. Abby Ediemi. Okay, you remember?
Good morning.
Do you remember the morning that we all did our cold sound effects?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was something like brr and so now that it's milder, what do we do, Heather?
I don't do sound effects. I don't know, maybe relief. A sigh. I don't know.
Okay, Corey, got anything for us?
The barbecuing sounds.
That's harder to do warm sound effects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we might need to practice. We'll get to the forecast in a moment. Let's start with the morning commute. Corey, what do we know about what it's like out there? I know you ran in.
Yes, I did run in. It's getting a little bit more mashed potato, brown sugary out there underfoot. You can notice things are kind of more like slippery. So just heads up if you are out there. Still decent on the sidewalks, though not too bad. Might just want to wear something with a little waterproofness to it. Out on the roads and the highways, haven't heard anything yet about any major issues this morning so far. Let's knock on wood that is the case on this lovely Friday. But I will say it is Friday, which means I'd like to open up the commuter line to also be a trail line, especially with folks who are hoping to maybe head out skiing. I know I'm hoping to go out for my first ski tonight, and I'm actually not even sure where I'm going to go. Maybe Windsor, maybe the river, maybe Wildwood. Not too sure because it might actually be more like water skiing. We'll see.
People will have to call and tell us.
Yeah, exactly. Give us a call. Tell us what conditions are like out there. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
And now to Abby with our forecast.
I'm just going to pick up from where Corey dropped off because it's going to be another day like yesterday. It will be mild all the way through to the weekend. Winnipeg is currently at -4 degrees. The normal high is -12. Mostly cloudy, slight chance of a little bit of snow this morning, and then we'll see a high of -2. With that risk of freezing and drizzle, we should also put that into consideration because it might affect your commute this morning. And while I noticed some fog patches on my way coming in this morning, so those fog patches, they will be dissipating, but you will definitely see them during your morning commute. So be cautious on the road. Right now, Winnipeg is at -4 degrees.
As I mentioned, nothing to be blue about at the end of January in Winnipeg. The new music festival kicked off last night. What is it about that guttural sound of a cello, right? The new music festival brings unique sounds and experiences to concert goers from artists and composers from around the world. Like Cello, who you're hearing here. The Canadian cello duo is playing at the Leaf on Sunday. What a venue, right? Can you imagine this show? Harry Staphylakis is co-curator of the festival and the WSO composer in residence. We're going to hear some of Harry's music as well while we're talking. But hi, Harry.
How's it going, Marcy?
Oh, it's going really well. How excited are you that the festival's now underway?
I'm on a perpetual adrenaline rush. I love this.
This show sounds amazing. So the Winnipeg's New Music Festival has been around for 33 years. I've covered a lot of these festivals and how they've evolved. From your perspective, though, how do you describe to listeners how the festival's changed and evolved?
Well, for one thing, it's grown. It's become quite an institution unto itself. It's the largest festival of its kind in Canada, dedicated to contemporary art music or contemporary classical music. And also, one of the things is we've seen just a growth in plurality of styles and diversity of musical styles that are presented. You know, when we think of the symphony orchestra and classical music, there's a particular sound in mind. But with new music, it could sound like anything, like the Camoncello excerpt that you just played right now is not something I would normally hear in a concert hall.
As a WSO composer in residence and co-curator of this, what will you be bringing to this year's programming? How have you tried to put your stamp on it this year?
Well, this year, we're particularly with this venue that you mentioned, the Leaf at Assiniboine Park that we're going to be going to on Sunday. The idea of organicity, of nature, of connectedness seems to come out to the forefront of our minds. And that grew in the programming with so many of the works by these international and Canadian composers that in some way are focused on themes of connectedness, of what unites us as people, and as well as to our environment and the world around us. It's really a community-focused themes, I guess.
I want to get to some of your music. So your music, we're going to hear this. You like to weave metal, like heavy metal, into your work.
That's right.
So we pulled a clip from Incinerate. This is performed by Evelyn Glennie and Land's End Ensemble. What I wonder is, when you're doing something like this piece of work, do you hear the classical first and then layer the metal into it to make it more, to add something? Or do you hear the whole thing encompassing in your head and go, this is what this is going to sound like?
Well, now you're calling me out. The truth is, I think primarily as a metal composer. That's my background. I came up as a metal songwriter, guitarist, producer. And that, even though I've been making my career in classical music for the last 15 years or so, the musical formation, the language, the flow, the groove, the sense of aggression is what comes first, and then that gets translated into the more classical instrumentation I tend to work with, though not always. I have plenty of works that feature electric guitars and drum set, like I just had Evelyn Glennie playing progressive metal style drum set in that piece.
It's crazy. I interviewed her when she was here for Past Festival, and she's phenomenal, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. How did you go from metal to classical music then? I don't know that story, Harry.
Well, I grew up at first as a classical pianist, turned over into metal for many years, from my teenage years into my 20s. And at some point, I felt like my compositional ambitions were limited by my lack of training, official compositional training. So I went off to McGill University to study classical composition to improve my metal writing, and ended up staying in that world because I just loved it. I loved the feeling of being able to write the most idealized versions of my music and having them played by these incredible musicians that we have in the classical music world, especially.
All right, last pitch. You ready? Tell us what you're most excited about at the festival this year to entice people to get out and experience it.
Well, starting right this evening, tomorrow in our first main concert, distinguished guest composer Missy Mazzoli is coming from New York. We're going to be featuring a number of her works throughout the festival, beginning with two of them tomorrow night. Camoncello at the Leaf is going to be an incredible thing. And right at the end of the festival, the great Julia Wolf, the co-founder of Bang on a Can, is going to be coming for the Canadian premiere of one of her new orchestral works. There's just so much, but just to name a few there.
Thank you very much for being on with us early, Harry. WNMF.com for more details, yeah?
.ca.
.ca. Oh, I said .com. Pardon me. See, that's why I say these things. Take care. Have a great festival.
Thank you so much, Marcy. Take care.
That is Harry Staphylakis, co-curator of the Winnipeg New Music Festival and WSO composer in residence. And so for more information, correctly, go to WNMF.ca. Here's more Camoncello playing at the Leaf this weekend. I love when they go really fast. It sounds all scratchy. That's my fave. Not a technical term. That's just my term. But hey, I'm one of those people that would go to the New Music Festival and not perform in it. Just like you can go as well. It kicked off last night. These guys perform on Sunday, Camoncello at the Leaf. 6:22 a.m. the time right now. It's -4. It's cloudy in Winnipeg. Well, next to the show, you might be familiar with the term workplace wellness. You might even have some programs in your office. Things like encouraging you to get up from your desk, take a walk at lunch, for instance. Maybe there's an on-site yoga class, or some companies pay for gym memberships. But we've been hearing this week on World Report that those measures for the mental health of coworkers might not be as beneficial as first thought. Research from Oxford University published this month in the Industrial Relations Journal suggests that employees who participate in such programs are no better off than their colleagues who don't. With her thoughts, Anne Gomez is here, author of Workday Warrior and president of the training organization Clear Concept Inc. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what do you make of this study that, everything that was all the rage might not be working for us?
Yeah, it's pretty thought-provoking, isn't it? It's counterintuitive to what we would think.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about overall your thoughts on workplace well-being programs in general, Anne.
Well, I'm definitely pro workplace well-being and programs that support it. Yeah, I think we'd all rather work for an organization that encouraged well-being, paid for our gym membership, brought in, different programs to support well-being. Definitely. But the question, of course, becomes why did we not see the positive effect? And I think there's a deeper question at play here, which is all about workplace culture.
So can you elaborate on that? For something like this to work, what has to be in place first?
Absolutely. So a yoga class at lunch will not fix a chronically stressed employee base. So what we need to look at is minimizing stress as opposed to kind of giving people solutions to offset the stress. So a meditation app that you company pays for won't offset the fact that many organizations are asking their employees to do too much at the same time. And we're seeing this, right, where resources are cut and companies are trying to do too many initiatives at the same time, so people are burned out. They feel pressure to never disconnect, always be working, evenings, weekends, vacation. And that is not going to lead to a healthy workplace.
So really, they're not working because we need to change internally, as you said, systems, cultures, but also, I guess, management is what we're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's this myth that more is more. And, companies are trying to achieve results, no doubt about it. But what's interesting is that the most effective organizations concentrate their priorities. So they achieve better results faster. And when we concentrate our priorities and stop trying to do everything at the same time, when we concentrate our priorities, we actually have a healthier workplace. Because, employees see that they're making progress on meaningful goals, which feels good. They don't feel the pressure to be in back-to-back meetings all day long, which is not good for our well-being. They feel like they can get up from their lunch and take a quick break, and that they can, or a solid lunch break, and that they can disconnect in the evening and have that important recovery time. So all of this works together. Right? What's good for business is actually also good for well-being.
But that only works, I think, for your mental health to improve if you're still achieving the outcomes that you attach with success in your workplace. Because you hear a lot of people say they feel set up to fail. It's like, well, I'm not going to go to the yoga class because I won't finish this assignment, even though that might be good for me. But something has to change, as you're saying, at the root level if companies are going to want to get ahead of this.
Totally, yeah. Like if a company brings in yoga class every day at lunch, but I don't have the time to go to that yoga class, then that's why the yoga class is not working.
I just want to look at this from a different perspective. How possible is that when the realities in our workforces are there are fewer people, there are just fewer people doing more things? Is it the goal setting at the front end, given the reality of the fewer people there? Is that the only way to get ahead of that?
I think that leaders have huge impact on, this is proven by research. Leaders have a huge impact on well-being and mental health. And this is emphasized by research, proven by research that companies and their leaders have as much of an impact on one's mental health as does one's spouse. So, yes, we at the company level very much need to be very focused on what we're trying to do right now. If we cut resources, then maybe we can't do those peripheral activities.
So, are there places that you've seen that have models that are effective, well-being strategies that are effective for people?
Oh, absolutely, yes. But those places have also figured out that the underlying culture needs to be one that doesn't push people to the brink of burnout.
How do you determine that? This is always $1 million question, because you can say, we say that, we talk about that with the research, but if a company's intention is never going to be, we're going to push our employees to burnout. So how should a company look at what questions should they ask to determine whether or not they need to make a systemic change?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really two things. We want to look at the stress level of our employees. And there's a difference between chronic stress and acute stress. So acute stress is good. When we have a big presentation doing a big client pitch, and people rise to the occasion, and that's stressful leading up to that. But that is good stress. We just want to make sure that we can oscillate in and out of stress. So there's recovery time after stressful moments. Chronic stress is the bad form of stress, where it's unrelenting and it never ends. So we want to have this kind of oscillation. So that's first. We want to measure stress level with our employees. Second, we want to measure the strength of our connections between employees. That's a big indicator of how healthy a workplace is.
Lots to think about in this study, as we started by saying it's almost counterintuitive to what you might have thought. I appreciate having you on this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. That's Anne Gomez. She's a speaker, author of the book Workday Warrior, and president of the training organization Clear Concept, Inc. If you want to weigh in on this, we have been talking about workplace wellness programs on CBC this week because of research that's out published recently that suggests employees who participate are no better off than their colleagues who do not. In Winnipeg, -4, cloudy right now. Later, it's going to be -2 and still wet out there. Also, that means so bumpy and icy in different spots as we kind of hover. Although today feels more wet than yesterday. Call us, though, if you do see a problem on the drive, 788-3093, or if you're walking or biking. We have business news coming up. Phil DeMont is actually in today, and he's going to talk about Tesla posting disappointing earnings for the last quarter. So we'll find out whether or not that's a signifier for what it means for the overall electric vehicle industry. We'll have that conversation and opening markets and numbers right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, we've warmed up a degree. It is now -4 in downtown Winnipeg. It's going to be a lot like yesterday. Again, we have a risk of freezing drizzle and a high today of -2. The death of a restaurant owner in St. James has people in Winnipeg's hospitality industry talking about crime and safety. Police say Kyriakos Voyajakis died Wednesday after an altercation with a male outside the restaurant he owns, Cork and Flame, on Portage Avenue. They haven't released any details about what might have led to that fight. Nasli Sharma is the general manager of a company that operates several restaurants in Winnipeg's South End. She says she was assaulted outside one of her restaurants in June and has had to implement new safety measures to keep her staff and customers safe.
Over the years, South Winnipeg, we really didn't have a great deal of issue. But in recent times, and I would say just prior to the pandemic and sort of cleaning up downtown, and I guess some of the crime has moved out into some of the other areas.
Winnipeg police say they have a suspect in custody and an autopsy is pending. The cousin of a First Nations woman whose remains are believed to be in a Winnipeg area landfill says it's time for the mayor to step up. Police say the bodies of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris are believed to be in the Prairie Green landfill north of the city. A second feasibility report on the logistics of a landfill search was sent to all three levels of government yesterday. The families want the province and the feds to fund a search. But Melissa Robinson, Harris's cousin, wants the city and the mayor to deliver on a promise made months ago. She says Scott Gillingham committed to setting aside land where a structure could be built to support a search.
He talks a good game. He needs to produce some land now. We finished the report. It's a matter of finding land now and then building structure so he can go ahead and produce something to us.
Gillingham's office says he has asked the city's public service to look for city lands that can be used near Prairie Green. A new development now in a story that shocked and saddened the country. 2 years ago, the Patel family, including their 11-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son, were found frozen to death on the Canada-U.S. border near Emerson. The family was trying to cross illegally into the U.S. They were taken there by human smugglers. Since their deaths, there have been arrests in India, but so far, none in Canada. CBC's Fifth Estate has tracked down one of the suspects Indian police say was there the night the Patels were taken to the border. Stephen D'Souza shows us where they found him.
Fennel Patel. He's wanted in India for culpable homicide and human trafficking. Indian police allege that he's part of the smuggling network that brought a family from India to a desolate section of the Manitoba-U.S. border to cross illegally into the U.S. in January 2022. That's where Jagdish Patel, his wife Vaishali, and their 2 children froze to death.
That's him. Yeah. Where is he? He's going to pick up the bin.
The Fifth Estate found him living just outside Toronto.
Indian police are accusing you of driving the Indian family, the Patel family, to the border. Did you drive them to the border, sir? Did you leave them out there to die? Did you drive them to the cold and leave them behind, sir?
He quickly turned and walked back into his house. Immigration lawyer Deepak Alawalia says there could be a number of reasons why the RCMP haven't arrested Fennel Patel.
RCMP may not have the actual minimum that they need to actually go ahead and charge this individual. The Indian authorities may still be collecting information.
The Fifth Estate contacted the RCMP about Fennel Patel. Their response? The investigation is progressing. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Toronto.
Search for the Smugglers airs tonight on the Fifth Estate on CBC Television, or you can stream it on YouTube this afternoon starting at noon Central Time. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A Winnipeg man who murdered a woman pregnant with his child won't be allowed to apply for early parole eligibility. Nathaniel Plourde is 15 years into a life sentence for the 2007 killing of 24-year-old Roxanne Fernando. A 12-person jury considered the now 36-year-old's bid for early parole eligibility. It was denied this week. Plourde beat Fernando to death with a monkey wrench while they were on what she thought was a date, admitting in court last week to planning the attack for weeks, saying he wanted her dead because of the pregnancy. Plourde had applied to seek early parole under the Faint Hope Clause in Canada's criminal code. A new queen was crowned in Winnipeg last night. Local drag artist Ruby Chopsticks lip-syncing before being chosen the first ever drag artist in residence by the Rainbow Resource Centre. The second-generation Vietnamese-Canadian has been performing since 2018 and says it meant a lot to even be considered for the position.
A lot of the time we aren't looked at. We're just very much like
either used as a tokenization, a token, a checklist, or were just discarded. So being chosen as a top 3 was shocking to me.
The year-long position was created to help uplift drag performers in Winnipeg and celebrate drag as an art form. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adiyemi, last weekend of January, last Friday in January.
And it's a mild Friday.
Yeah, it sure is.
Currently, we are at -4 in downtown Winnipeg. Today's like yesterday, and it's going to be like that all weekend. Mostly cloudy. We have that slight chance of a little bit of snow this morning, and we're headed to a high of -2 with a risk of freezing drizzle and a chance of light snow later this morning. Heading to Brandon now, it's currently -8 with it's misty out there. It will clear before noon, and then you'd definitely be seeing a risk of freezing drizzle also your way. Fog patches you're seeing this morning will be dissipating, and Brandon is heading to a high of -2. Tonight will be clear in that Westman region. -6 in Thompson with mist. Today is going to be mainly cloudy. Expect light snow and fog patches this morning. You'd see a high of -5. Churchill is at -19 with light snow. This period of light snow will be with you for the most of the day. You'll see a high of -10, and there's a risk of frostbite for the period for that part of Churchill. Gimli is currently at -4 with light snow, mainly cloudy today. We're going to see a high of -1. Dauphin is at -12. It's clear out there. You're heading to a high of -2. Steinbach is at -4 with light snow, and you're heading to a high of -1. Maurice and the rest of the Pembina Valley region is currently at -4. Later in the day, you'll be seeing a mix of sun and cloud, and there's a risk of a freezing drizzle also coming your way, but we will see a high of +1 in that part of the province. Right now, Winnipeg is currently at -4.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, the commute.
Yeah, roads and highways so far seem to be doing A-okay in terms of no real issues that I've heard of so far on the commuter line. Looking on those sidewalks, a little bit slippery, a little bit mushy, mashed potato, brown sugar vibes on there. So might want to wear a little more waterproof footwear if you are planning to head out on foot today. Been asking also folks this morning, opening it up to call the trail line today. Let me know what you're thinking in terms of skis, what you're seeing out there, the ski trails. I'm very curious. I'm hoping to go for my first ski tonight. So hoping for some tips actually just personally, but also I'm sure lots of people are eager to hear what's going on. I'm looking just on the Cross Country Ski Association of Manitoba website, and hearing about good conditions.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
With the mild weather.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Birds Hill's looking great. Windsor Park's looking great. There's a lot of freshly groomed trails looking out there.
Cut those ski lines in.
Exactly. Yeah, those classic trails are looking tidy, apparently, for sure at Birds Hill and Windsor. So if you got any other updates of what you're seeing out there on the trails, on the highways, bike lanes, roads, give me a call and I will let folks know what you're seeing out there. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Phil DeMont is here this morning, making his triumphant return, filling in for Krista Lee at the CBC Business Desk. Hi, Phil.
Yeah, call to the bullpen and you get Larry, Curly, and Mo. That's me. So.
Listen, before we turn to your first story, it's tied into something that we have coming up. Marketplace did an investigation on EVs and what the charging infrastructure is really like. So we're going to hear that this half hour. But you have a story about Tesla, speaking of which, posting disappointing earnings for the latest quarter. What do you think that means for the EV industry, electric vehicles overall?
I mean, it's obvious bad news because it's such a big player in the sector. But in one sense, the sector's been plagued by overblown expectations. So Tesla made 71 cents a share in the quarter. The estimate was 73 cents. But Marcy, no one really cares about that. Here's what caught analysts' attention. Revenue up only 1% in the quarter. That despite Tesla dropping car prices in key markets. It's a high-priced vehicle compared to its competitors. Had to bring it down because that's how competition works. So you'd expect more sales. All you got was Tesla's profit margins dropping by almost 50%. Analysts looked at that and said, we're selling. Stock was off 12% yesterday, 27% for the month. Now, here's the kind of oddity or the irony, well, if you will. Tesla's vehicle deliveries were up almost 40% in the year. But that number's a disappointment. And those kind of sales figures have plagued the sector. Good numbers overall, but the expectations were really high. In this case, analysts had expected last year companies to sell about 14 million vehicles worldwide, electric vehicles. They got that. But everybody was still disappointed. So I'm looking at it this way. The average EV inventory at the beginning of the year was 52 days. That means you're sitting on the lot for 52 days. Now it's 115 days, means cars are piling up at the dealership. I suspect sales started to slow towards the end of the year, especially in Canada and the U.S., likely because of high interest rates. But companies still were producing at the higher pace. Now they have to work through the inventories. That meant that they're cutting down production, laying off some people, that kind of stuff. So the numbers were disappointing because basically they had overly high expectations towards the end of the year.
Let's look at another industry. Cannabis sales have begun dropping. And hasn't that industry been on a bit of a downward slide for a while?
Well, when you look at the weed industry, the headlines are bad, but it's really around the companies, not consumption. That's actually been on the rise. So you go back to August, this is a 3-month moving average, but Canadians bought $450 million of weed per month. So back in August, that's the peak. That's up from about $280 million at the beginning of 2021. So that's almost a 50%, something like that, 35% increase. But the industry probably is a bit worried because in November, consumption fell to $430 million. That's not a big drop. But with the industry's precarious financial position, stumbles a problem. Cannabis really has been played by a lot of small players without much financial acumen, thinking to make a quick buck, and all they got was a bunch of headaches. As a result, the headlines have been companies closing up, getting bought out, stock prices tanking, that kind of stuff. By last April, for example, something like 15% of cannabis permit holders had left the industry. So a small financial drop in terms of sales could lead to an outsized problem for the sector because there's a lot of companies, small ones especially, nowhere to go.
Something that they're going to have to pay attention to. That's why that small drop. Yeah.
Yep.
It could be a big thing. Cargo theft, before you look at markets, I understand that experts might think this is on the rise these days?
They think it could be a record-breaking year this year. That's because the number of incidents of pallet or truck stealing jumped 60% in the third quarter of 2023 versus the previous year. That was after an increase of 15% in 2022. Almost 1,800 incidents in Canada and the U.S. One reason, this type of thievery is spreading into smaller markets in both countries. Cargo carriers in these areas typically don't have as much security because they've never needed it, unlike places like Texas and California. Also, ne'er-do-wells getting more sophisticated to the degree that they'll steal brokerage or carrier IDs, go into the port, and then walk off with the entire truck load of goods. Theft can be as simple as following a truck driver, waiting for him to go and get a meal, and then they break into the back of a carrier. Canada not immune. Last year, crooks made off with more than $20 million of gold and other commodities from Pearson in one theft. Experts say companies have to put in more protective measures to keep cargo safe, but how do you protect against a driver having to go to the bathroom?
You can't, I'm guessing.
I know. Yeah, that's a problem.
What's going on in the markets this morning?
A bit of a split screen. Europe, the European Central Bank kept interest rates steady, so the UK up more than 1%, France up more than 2%. But the EV stock sell-off, that hurt the Nikkei in Japan and Hong Kong, both markets off by more than, or about 1.5%. Oil down 55 cents, $76.81 a barrel. Gold up $5, 2,000 and change. And the Canadian dollar up by more than 1/4 cent, trading at 74.38 cents U.S.
You know, it took me a minute, Phil, but I mean, two drivers, I guess, is the answer to that question.
Well, yeah, but you still got to stop.
So, but the vehicle would never be alone.
You sit in the truck. Yeah, no, fair enough. Okay,
but then you have a whole other conversation about whether companies are going to pay for that, right? That's a different thing. So,
bit of an issue, and if you don't get along, change that radio.
Nice to have you on again. Take care.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Phil DeMont filling in for Crystalie Ramlicam with our business news. Phil, it's always good times. 6:44 a.m. is the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. or on that CBC Listen app. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show, and I just saw Jim Agapito through the glass. Jim is in early because he's heading out early. In the next hour, he's going to bring us a story from the ice. We're going to hear about a special warming hut that's down on the skating trail this year, down at the Forks at the big displays. So we'll be there live in the next hour of the show. Stay tuned. Right now, a little bit of music from Alex Marr. And inspiration for Alex Marr's latest tune came to him on the commute, not to work, but home, and seeing the planet Mars as his drive home companion. This tune's called Red Planet.
I've always been the one and only. So happy with the love we found. She never left me feeling lonely. But today I'm burning it to the ground. Don't understand why I can't hold anything sacred. Like it don't matter. All of my demons I'm tired of chasing. Stay, we can make this forever again. Not gonna wait until tomorrow. Hear what causes sorrow. Feel the space is hollow. Make it amends. Not gonna wait until tomorrow. Hear what causes sorrow. Feel the space is hollow. I don't wanna lose your love again. I don't wanna lose your love again. I don't wanna lose your love. Ain't no doubt about you. I'd be lost without you. I'd be ejected on a second tech and tossed without you. The biggest friend of me, your energy is so fine. Can't be your enemy, serenity's a gold mine. If I just stay connected and maintain direction, what I expected doesn't always have to say perfection. I don't wanna say this just to fight you. I wanna stay here forever right beside you. Stay, we can make this forever again. Not gonna wait until tomorrow. Hear what causes sorrow. Feel the space is hollow. Make it amends. Not gonna wait until tomorrow. Hear what causes sorrow. Feel the space is hollow. I don't wanna lose your love again.
Winnipeg's Alex Marr, tune's called Red Planet. Why does a saxophone always sound so sexy? Are we programmed because it's been in things that are sexy as background music, and that's why we think of it that way? But every time I hear a good sax, Alex is a multi-instrumentalist, so you can check out his music and more about him as an artist at Manitoba Music.
Forget your fancy indoor rinks, you Bonspiel newbies. Iron Man outdoor curling is for those who hurry hard to curl on the frozen river.
Why are you talking like that?
I'm making the Iron Man outdoor curling promo sound tougher.
But it's basically a fun spiel on the ice that everyone will enjoy. February 2nd to 4th. CBC is a proud sponsor.
Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more. Sorry, Janet.
-4 in Winnipeg this morning. It is cloudy and chance of snow this morning. 30% chance we'll see some of that, with freezing drizzle being a risk as well. So fog patches could also be a challenge for you. If any of this is affecting your drive in or outside the city, it seems pretty calm downtown, but it is in the forecast, so let us know. A high of -2, and the number to call for the commute is 788-3093. Well, next on the show, as Canada races toward a zero-emissions future, an increasing number of electric vehicles are hitting the road, and more drivers will be looking for pit stops where they can power up. But CBC Marketplace's latest investigation has found a wild west, so to speak, of pricing and patchy reliability across the country when it comes to public charging infrastructure. Host Charles Iagro says that experts now are calling for more standardization, and she walked me through the details.
Hi, good morning.
So, Charlesie, to start, I know your team hit the road in an EV. What did you learn when you tried to charge up?
I had never driven an electric vehicle, so I learned a lot. But the real goal here was to just get a sense of how is this public charging infrastructure working for the people who need it? How's it going? So we visited 12 different charging stations, and these were from leading providers, Ivy, Flow, ChargePoint, and Petro-Canada. We had challenges charging at 7 of those 12, including at 2 places where we could not charge at all. The challenges ranged. Sometimes we couldn't start the charge. Sometimes we couldn't end the charge. In some places, we could pay through the app. In some places, we could only pay through a credit card. At other places, one machine would do one way and then one machine would do something else. And experts have really been critical of this, that there's no consistent, convenient approach when it comes to charging. It's been called buggy, poorly coordinated, poorly standardized. And this poor reliability, this lack of maintenance, they're common complaints we heard from consumers and things we experienced ourselves during our test. So we took our results and we brought them to Stephen Guilbeault, the Minister of the Environment. He said, Marketplace, your sample's small. Fair. He said most Canadians he's talked to have had a really positive experience with their RV. We've heard that too. But he acknowledged there is room for improvement here.
If we need to do more to ensure that these charging stations are working as efficiently as possible across the country in terms of regulations or new clause in contracts that we're signing, we are certainly open to doing that.
This is going to become increasingly important for an increasing number of Canadians because, hey, by 2035, remember, all new vehicle sales in this country are going to have to be electric.
You also did some math for this week's investigation, so help us understand what some of the costs are like for consumers who are looking to charge up.
Yes. So this was really revealing too, because, right now, most electric vehicle owners, they're probably charging their car at home, typically overnight, because that's when off-peak electricity rates typically kick in. So that's when it's the cheapest. For those who are using a public charging station, though, we found you can be paying twice as much for the same charge, depending on when you fill up. Now, the difference, though, is for EV drivers, unlike those shopping around for gas, you can't always tell. So I want to fill my car up with gas. I'm driving around. Over here, $1.15 a liter. Over there, $2 a liter. Where am I going? Well, you're probably going where the gas is cheapest. EV drivers, though, it's really tough for them to make those comparisons because right now, some are billing by the minute. Some are billing by the hour. And less than 25% of public charging stations are currently billing by what's called the kilowatt hour. Now, this is considered to be the by the liter equivalent for gasoline. Now, this comparison that we did, 25 cents per kilowatt hour at some stations compared to as much as 50 cents per kilowatt hour, the environment minister said, okay, might be time to change this. It might be time to think about making it a little bit easier for consumers to do those price comparisons. Here's Stephen Guilbeault again.
Production of electricity is a provincial territorial jurisdiction. So this is something we need to work with our provincial and territorial colleagues to find solutions to. Is it the best way of doing it? Perhaps. Can we impose this on provinces and territories? I don't think so, but we can work with them to try and ensure that we have the most efficient system in terms of tarification across the country.
You've actually got some really competitive rates for electricity in Winnipeg. So I'm looking at the 2023 average price per kilowatt there, 10.24 cents per kilowatt hour. So again, if you do the math, charging at home will likely continue to be affordable for people in Winnipeg.
Now, what do the charging stations and providers themselves have to say?
So ChargePoint says they fixed some of the issues we've raised and independent owners set their prices. Flow said the same about their pricing. It's those independent owners making that choice. And their machines, they say at Flow, work 98% of the time. Ivy says they're one of the first to adopt kilowatt hour pricing and they're committed to improving their processes. Petro-Canada says they're working to meet the needs of customers and they provide pricing that's competitive in each province.
Now, just before you go this morning, do you have any tips for people out there who do need to charge or are considering an EV based on, the fact that you've been out comparing all of this?
Yes. Given your rates in Winnipeg, you're going to want to check what your hydro provider offers and at what time. That way you can make the choice. What's going to be the most cost effective for you if you are able to charge at home? If you do need to use a public charger, experts say you're going to want to plan your route, ahead of time, using the app that is specific to the brand of charger that you're planning on visiting. That's important because that app is likely to give you the most up-to-date and accurate information about the brand you're planning on going to. Now, keep in mind, I say hopefully, hopefully. Lastly, if you are a person who is considering, making the switch and you are thinking that an electric vehicle is for you, try and do some math about how far you're driving. That way you can do the gasoline comparison and see what option may be the most affordable, the most cost effective for you.
All right, Charles, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Charles Agro is a host with CBC's Marketplace, and you can watch this week's episode tonight at 8 o'clock on CBC television, or you can stream it anytime on CBC Gem. We always ask this question after anything to do with EVs in the province. Have you traveled somewhere? Do you have a story to share? Do you have firsthand information about what it's like for you out there? You can always reach out to CBC and let us know. Also, if you have a story idea for any of our units across the country, I want to mention that you can always pitch us here and we can pass it on. So if you hear something nationally on Marketplace or on Fifth Estate, which has a big story with some Manitoba connections today, or if it's Go Public, our Go Public unit nationally, you can always reach out to us here locally at CBC and we will get that to our colleagues nationally. Well, we're coming up to 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. We'll touch base with Heather Wells momentarily for headlines. Let's have a quick look at what's happening on the commute. Yesterday was challenging in ways that maybe we didn't anticipate because of the milder weather. But right around zero yesterday, we had that melting, lots of ice out there. It actually feels a little bit more settled this morning, maybe even a little bit more wet than icy. But if you see something to the contrary, please let us know. 788-3093 is where you can reach us with any details on your commute, whether you're on the highway in the city or maybe you're on foot or you're biking. Heather Wells is here now with our update on news. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the owner of a St. James coffee shop says he will be taking extra precautions after the death of a restaurant owner this week. Eric Fulliard owns Daily Grind just down the street from where the owner of Cork and Flame died on Wednesday. And while his business has only been hit by a rash of petty crime in the last couple of years, Fulliard sees the rise of violent crime all around him. So we'll hear more about that. And an exclusive story from CBC's Fifth Estate. 2 years ago, the Patel family, including their 11-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son, were found frozen to death on the Canada-U.S. border, trying to cross illegally into the U.S., taken there by human smugglers. The Fifth Estate has tracked down one of the suspects Indian police say was there the night the Patels were taken to the border. You can hear more on that story coming up on World Report. More Manitoba news coming up for you at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Stephen D'Souza is going to join us, in fact, in the next hour with details at 10 to 8 on that story. So we'll have a deeper look at that around what they discovered about the investigation of the Patel family. So that's coming up at 10 to 8. Also in the next hour of the show, restaurant owners, 2 of them are going to join us here. One in studio, one on the phone, just because she couldn't quite make it down today. But we're going to have a full conversation about safety all over the city for people who are running businesses and specifically restaurants in light of what happened yesterday on Portage Avenue here at Cork and Flame. Plus, we have something fun and lovely coming up. CBC's Jim Agapito is going to be out live. A special hut is opening at the Forks today. Its creators say it will bring you warmth and comfort through the Eagle. So we'll learn all about that. In the forecast, that's going to bring you some warmth and comfort too. Cloudy and -4 right now, -2 later, and we could have just a slight chance we'll have some snow this morning. Stay with us. We have World Report coming up next. The latest in national and international news. And the UN court has stopped short of ordering a ceasefire. This is developing news this morning that has ruled that Israel must prevent genocide. So what does that mean? This has just been developing, and we'll hear more. Some analysis coming up on World Report. Stay with us.
Today on The Current, They are amazing to watch. The swimmer winning races at the age of 99, or the pole vaulter competing into their 80s. Researchers say it's never too late to start exercising, even if you're not at this elite level. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm John Northcott. We begin with breaking news from The Hague, where just moments ago, the president of the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to take measures to protect Palestinians in Gaza. It says the ICJ will hear the genocide case South Africa has brought against Israel, and in the meantime, protective measures are required. For more, let's bring in our correspondent, Chris Brown, in Jerusalem. Chris, take us through this ruling.
Well, Justice Joan Donoghue began by reading the decision saying the International Court of Justice is acutely aware of the human tragedy in Gaza and affirmed that the court was very concerned about the loss of life and suffering. Israel has said that South Africa's claims of genocide are absurd and obscene, and it wanted the case thrown out, but the court disagreed with that. It says at least some of Israel's actions in Gaza might be capable of falling within the scope of the Genocide Convention. It noted there are more than 26,000 dead, along with a huge number of Palestinian institutions such as schools and buildings destroyed. And it also noted that the humanitarian situation is at risk of deteriorating further. In determining its interim orders, the court cited statements by Israeli cabinet ministers, including Yoav Gallant, who in October announced a complete siege and said, "I have released all restraints. We are fighting human animals," he was quoted as saying in the court. And the court determined that there is a real and imminent risk to Palestinians unless it made some provisional measures. Crucially for Israel, the court did not order Israel to suspend its military operations in Gaza, as South Africa had asked, but it did rule that Israel must take measures to improve the humanitarian situation. The court also said Israel must preserve any evidence of alleged genocide and take measures to punish anyone who incites genocide. And finally, the court ordered that Israel submit a report to the court within a month on its actions. Here in Israel, no doubt there will be both anger and relief at this decision today. Anger that the case is still proceeding, but also I think some relief that the crucial issue of the continuation of the military operation in Gaza was not something addressed by these rulings.
CBC's Chris Brown reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
In this country, CBC News has learned Kenneth Law is facing at least one upgraded charge of first-degree murder. The Ontario man has been in custody since last May, accused of helping dozens of people kill themselves around the world. Before now, the Law was charged with second-degree murder and counselling or aiding suicide in connection with 14 deaths across Ontario. Now it appears authorities are taking a new, tougher approach to his case. In the U.S. state of Alabama, it carried out a controversial execution last night.
I've never, ever seen anything like that. That was absolute torture, and torture is evil.
That's Jeff Hood describing the final moments of Kenneth Smith's life. Hood was a witness at the execution, which was carried out with the use of nitrogen gas, which the United Nations, among others, consider cruel and inhuman. Hood says the execution went badly, with Smith heaving back and forth. In his final statement, Smith said, quote, "Tonight, Alabama caused humanity to take a step backward." Smith has been on death row since the mid-1990s after being found guilty of murder. Dozens of female political prisoners in Tehran's Evin prison are now on a hunger strike. They're protesting the recent executions of two other prisoners. One was linked to the Woman Life Freedom protest. Journalist Nahayat Tazoush is following developments. Nahayat, among the hunger strikers, there are some high-profile prisoners.
That's right, John. So 61 Iranian women, political prisoners from diverse backgrounds, have united in this hunger strike. That includes recent Nobel Peace Prize winner Narges Mohammadi. They're protesting the latest executions of Mohammad Qobadlu and Farhad Salimi, and they're demanding an end to executions in Iran. Now, this type of collective effort from inside Evin prison, which is notorious for its human rights abuses, is unprecedented. And today, we're seeing dozens of former women prisoners and human rights activists joining this protest, as well as renowned dissident rapper Tumar Salehi, who was rearrested last month.
Now, Hyatt, what more can you tell us about the executions that they're protesting?
This week on Tuesday, Iranian authorities hanged Mohammad Qobadlu and Farhad Salimi. Rights groups say both men were imprisoned on arbitrary charges and subjected to unfair trials. Qobadlu was a 23-year-old man with mental health conditions and one of the tens of thousands detained in the authorities' crackdown on anti-regime demonstrations in 2022. Salimi came from Iran's Kurdish Sunni minority and was imprisoned for over 14 years. Now, this latest news highlights the sharp rise of official executions in Iran, with 54 people executed this year alone. Amnesty International is calling it a relentless killing spree in the aftermath of the Women Life Freedom protests.
Journalist Nahayat Tazoush reporting from Milan. Thanks, Nahayat.
Thank you, John.
To India now, where the country is celebrating Republic Day to commemorate the day its constitution was signed. The annual parade, full of pomp and ceremony with a focus on military might, was attended this year by French President Emmanuel Macron. France is eager to strengthen its ties with India, now the world's fifth largest economy. But on another diplomatic front, India is vehemently denying allegations from neighboring Pakistan that Indian agents were involved in murder-for-hire plots that killed 2 men on Pakistani soil. Our South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has the details.
A sophisticated and sinister Indian campaign.
Pakistan's foreign secretary laying out the allegations. Mohammad Cyrus Qazi says Islamabad has credible evidence that India's intelligence agency was behind 2 assassinations of Pakistani citizens inside Pakistan. The 2 men were killed in separate incidents at different mosques, Qazi says, alleging Indian agents orchestrated it all from a third country.
Potential assassins were recruited using social media, talent spotters, and fake Daesh accounts.
It comes after Canada unveiled similar accusations that India's intelligence agency was behind the assassination of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, killed last June, and after the U.S. unsealed an indictment charging a man who they say was paid by an Indian government official to arrange the killing of a Sikh American. Islamabad is linking all 3 together, Qazi says.
Clearly, the Indian network of extrajudicial and extraterritorial killings has become a global phenomenon.
India's foreign ministry in a statement flatly rejected the claims, lashing out at its bitter rival Pakistan, calling the allegations false and malicious anti-India propaganda. Pakistan didn't indicate whether it would move forward with any charges. In Canada, the RCMP's months-long investigation into the alleged assassination in BC is ongoing. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
And finally, a new development in a story that shocked and saddened the country. 2 years ago, the Patel family, including their 11-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son, were found frozen to death on the Canada-U.S. border near Emerson, Manitoba. The family was attempting to cross illegally into the U.S. in the middle of a bitter snowstorm. They were brought there by human smugglers, and since their deaths, there have been arrests in India, but so far none in Canada. The Fifth Estate has tracked down one of the suspects Indian police say was there the night the Patels were taken to the border. Stephen D'Souza shows us where they found him.
We're just in traffic right now. I'm like 2 or 3 cars behind him.
For more than a year, the Fifth Estate has been trying to track down an alleged human smuggler. His name is Fennel Patel. He's wanted in India for culpable homicide and human trafficking. Indian police allege that he's part of the smuggling network that brought a family from India to a desolate section of the Manitoba-U.S. border to cross illegally into the U.S. in January 2022. That's where Jagdish Patel, his wife Vaishali, and their 2 children froze to death.
That's him. Yeah. Where is he? He's going to pick up the bin.
The Fifth Estate found him living just outside Toronto.
Indian police are accusing you of driving the Indian family, the Patel family, to the border. Did you drive them to the border, sir? Did you leave them out there to die? Did you drive them to the cold and leave them behind, sir?
He quickly turned and walked back into his house. So why is an alleged human smuggler apparently living freely in Canada?
That's the million-dollar question.
Immigration lawyer Deepak Alawalia says there could be a number of reasons why the RCMP haven't arrested Fennel Patel.
RCMP may not have the actual minimum that they need to actually go ahead and charge this individual. The Indian authorities may still be collecting information.
The Fifth Estate contacted the RCMP about Fennel Patel. Their response? The investigation is progressing. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Toronto.
Search for the Smugglers airs tonight at 9 p.m. on the Fifth Estate on CBC Television, or you can stream it on YouTube this afternoon starting at 1 p.m. Eastern. Well, that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Remember, for news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca, including the top story this hour, that Fifth Estate investigation. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
What a wet and mild final Friday of January we're going to have on our hands today. Abby in with the forecast in a moment, but not mild enough to ruin the fun at the Forks. This hour on the show, we'll hear about a special warming hut that's going to keep Manitobans warm in the skating trail this year, but also bring you comfort through the Eagle. So we'll find out more about it and what it looks like. As I mentioned, Jim Agapito's out live this morning. Also, Stephen D'Souza is going to join us, actually. We're going to hear more about that investigation with the Patel family and what they have found as they were doing their own investigation into what happened. But we begin with follow-up on a story that was just developing yesterday when we got off air. The death of a restaurant owner in Winnipeg. We're going to speak to two others involved in the industry about how they're feeling about the recent death of the restaurant owner at Cork and Flame who died following a fight outside his business this week. We are still confirming details. Police have not released details about what may have led to the fight yet. And the Winnipeg police say they also have a suspect in custody and an autopsy is pending. But we have certainly been hearing a lot from restaurant owners across the city about their sense of safety. So we're going to talk to a couple of them this half hour. Right now, it is 7:11. Heather Wells is in with other headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, First Nations leaders and families are urging governments to act quickly on a new report just released yesterday. It outlines how to search a Winnipeg area landfill for the remains of two First Nations women. The report identifies two paths forward, including one on an expedited timeline on how to search Prairie Green landfill. So we'll hear about that. Also, a new queen was crowned in Winnipeg last night. That's local drag artist Ruby Chopsticks lip-syncing before being chosen the first ever drag artist in residence by the Rainbow Resource Centre. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Fun. Thank you.
Okay.
Abby Adiemi, the forecast.
As we roll into rush hour, the current temperature is at -4 degrees. It's a morning to take it slow out there and take it steady. Mainly cloudy skies will be with us all through the day with a 30% chance of light snow. Freezing drizzle may make an appearance later in the day, and the fog patches we talked about earlier this morning are gradually lifting. The high for today will reach -2. As night falls, expect partly cloudy skies, which would clear before morning, but you need to be cautious if you're going to be traveling because the fog patches will definitely be developing again, and then the temperature will drop to -9. But for commuters out there, just take it easy on the sidewalk and on the road because of that slight drizzle we got, it might be slippery. So you need to really, really take it easy.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk?
Yeah, speaking of that drizzle, Alice gave us a call. She said, actually, so far the roads seem to be doing okay, but she is going through window washer fluid like it's fruit juice at a summer camp. It is just flowing. She's just guzzling that stuff.
That's a good one. Was that her line or yours?
Yeah, that was mine. I used to work at a summer camp.
You're getting a high five.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Air high five.
Those kids, so many juice mustaches all over the place. Those kids love juice. But anyway, so keep an eye out for that. You may want to have some, if you're stopping at a gas station, maybe pick up some extra window washer fluid because you're going to go through it real quickly, probably for the next few weeks, it looks like, actually, according to the forecast. If you see anything else going out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, let me know. Curious about what the trails are looking like out there as well for you. Hoping to go for a ski this weekend. And what are you seeing at Windsor, Birds Hill, anywhere else in the province? What are the ski trails looking like? So far I've heard Birds Hill and Windsor are looking lovely. Nice. So looking forward to hit that up. But if you see something going out there, the Commuter line, call that number 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, some people who work in the food and hospitality community in Winnipeg say that the recent death of a restaurant owner is indicative of a larger problem. 51-year-old Kyriakis Voyajakis died Wednesday night following a fight outside his St. James restaurant. Voyajakis was the owner of Cork and Flame on Portage Avenue. When officers arrived, they found him outside the restaurant in need of medical attention, and he died later in hospital. We are told, as I mentioned, a suspect is in custody and an autopsy is pending, and police have not yet released any details about what may have led to the fight. Next on the show, we're going to widen the conversation out. Eric Foyard's business, Daily Grind Coffee, is located across the street from Cork and Flame. He says he's noticed crime increasing in the area over the last few years, and he's in studio with us this morning. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. On the other side of town, in Winnipeg South, up Pembina Highway, Nasli Sharma is the General Manager of Hospitality and Guest Services for 12 Tim Hortons locations. She says she's been noticing the same thing, and she's on the phone with us this morning on the line. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Eric.
So let's start with you, Eric. Your business is across the street from Cork and Flame. How are you doing? What was your reaction when you heard about this?
Well, I was cleaning up early in the morning, and then I heard the details that he passed away when his brother had posted on Facebook that there was an incident.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he didn't mention anything about the incident. I knew about there being an incident there sometime around 7:30 or so because there were police all around the building. And then I was cleaning early in the morning, and I saw the post, and then I was like, "Oh, okay, this is serious." First thoughts, I guess, were I feel like I was in a prison at that moment. I guess, like, is somebody going to come in and randomly do something to me? I've always, from time to time, had to play the bouncer in the store. I don't like doing that anymore.
Can you give me an example of that? What do you mean by
Well,
that?
like somebody comes up to the till and tries to grab the tip jar. I've been known to try and throw them out, or
You're intervening.
Yeah, oh yeah. Sometimes you have to, because otherwise then the customers will try and intervene on your behalf, and you want to prevent people from jumping in on it because
You're trying to take control of the
yeah,
situation.
take control of it just so that nobody else gets hurt.
So how often is that happening to you, that you're having things like that happen?
Actually, coincidentally, it's probably once every week.
Okay,
maybe
frequently?
twice. Yeah, there was an incident 2 days prior. A homeless man came in with blood on his face, or I'm not too sure the details because he kind of just gravitated out of the store after taking some books.
Okay. He stole something from you, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we just let it happen.
Tell me about that before I turn to Nasli. You said, if I'm saying that here, heard you correctly, you said
Yeah.
you would be intervening, but now you're not doing that anymore. Tell me why not? How is your, about how does that speak to your sense of safety?
First of all, it's not worth the book. It's not worth, $10 in tips. We do take the tip jar down a lot now. I don't know what to say.
How much anxiety is this causing you?
Oh, crazy now. I've never had an anxiety attack until just a month ago, and I've never had these experiences before. I've lived in some pretty dangerous places throughout my life, and now I feel like Winnipeg has become maybe even worse than what I've experienced in the past.
I want to turn my attention to Nasli here, who's been listening in, of course, Eric, and to take this into another part of Winnipeg. And I can tell both of you that we, during the election, we were calling around to different restaurants all over the city to go out on location early in the morning. I cannot explain to you how many business owners, I mean, from the north end to the west end to down Pembina Highway to in this, area around downtown, talked to us about security. It's the first thing they said to us, and that has not happened in my experience. There's been some kind of a shift here. Nasli, you're up on Pembina Highway as one of the locations that you have worked out of before, and as we mentioned, there's a number of Tims you're involved with. But you have a personal experience with respect to crime and safety. Can you briefly describe what happened?
I do, and I think you're well familiar with this. But for listeners and for Eric, this was in June, and just like him, I intervened. We won't be doing that again, but I intervened to prevent an unhoused person who we've known for a long time from launching herself at our manager, and I took the brunt of the assault, which is, I suppose, not necessarily the mandate, but like Eric said, you want to step in there and you want to prevent. That's what happened.
And you ended up in recovery for quite some time because you were injured there. Yeah.
Yes, significant. Yes.
So what is
singing? But it changed my whole mindset.
So explain that. What do you mean by changed your whole mindset, and what's resonating with you and what Eric said, just to connect sort of across Winnipeg how people might be feeling, some business owners?
Exactly. The anxiety that Eric mentioned, and I'm glad he shared that. I think we're all operating in an elevated level of anxiety. The managers on a daily basis, our evening staff, but we stay true to the protocols that we put in place and that Tim Hortons and our owner group stringently enforce on a regular basis, of robbery prevention, intervention. The only intervention that we will have is staying behind the counter and calling 911 if the situation is something that we see as potentially harmful.
What works? Because obviously calling 911 is, we've done stories on how long that can also take because, systems are all stressed in Winnipeg right now. But do security guards work? Do, not intervening might, it's a strategy to keep things safe. But, I'm just curious, Nasli, if you're going to respond, and then Eric's got his hand up, he wants to respond as well. What's your sense of what might work?
Well, Eric, I don't know if you have security guards, but we did try that. But, their mandate is not to engage. When I say not to engage, they may verbally engage, but they don't apprehend anybody. They don't get involved in fisticuffs. That is just not what that's not their mandate. I don't think so. And I was told by various companies that they won't. They're there as prevention. So pre-prevention. So there is a visible deterrent. And then we employ the same things, I'm sure Eric does too, with regard to robbery and burglary. We keep all our premises well lit, no obstructions, and doors secure, zero cash on the premises. Cash is cleared on a regular basis, daily. And as he mentioned, a book was taken from his premises. It's not worth it. We used to have lots of displays. You may remember Tim Hortons, you walk in and see displays. Very, very, very seldom will you see a display fully stocked anymore because it's just not worth the attraction.
So you're just shifting it. It's almost like if in a vehicle people say don't leave anything within view. You're changing your business environment so there's nothing there that might attract some kind of a theft or incident.
Exactly.
Eric, you were going to respond to the idea of security and such. So tell me a bit about that and moving forward also what around your place in St. James.
Yeah, not even just in my area. Like, I think people have noticed that when they go into a superstore now or wholesale, there's not security guards only, but police. There's people that are just grabbing whatever they can and racing out of the store, and someone's going to try and intervene, and someone's going to get hurt, obviously. And that's what's going on is people are coming in and taking what they can get out of the place. And
the randomness
it's so random, and like there's no set schedule to decide when these people are going to come in. Like it's not like they come in at peak volume times. Typically they'll come in when there's fewer people because they know someone's going to intervene on like try and stop them from stealing. And not only that, but you don't know if they're carrying a weapon. I've had a weapon pulled on me before.
What was pulled on you?
It was one of those collapsible batons.
Okay.
That was forwarded to the police. This guy's a recurring thief as well. He comes in and steals the tip jar. I call him the tip jar thief. And he is now becoming violent. He's in a defensive posture. He's lost his teeth. So I'm guessing he's had fights. people are getting more violent.
So let me ask you if you think
yeah.
it's being taken seriously enough, Eric, in the city.
I think they're overburdened. I think the cops just don't have the manpower anymore. They're watching superstores now. They're mandated to just be there as a imposing figure now. I find that I'm not too sure how quickly they responded to the cork and flame incident, but I feel like
they're overburdened.
And I've called 911 how many times, and even within the last month, and I would say that it feels like they're completely overburdened. Like they cannot handle the demands that are out there right now.
Well, this is part of a larger conversation, obviously, but in our last minute here, Nasli, moving forward, what are your hopes for how we might improve things in Winnipeg?
Well, you know my hopes, Marcy. My hopes is that we don't, move in the direction of defunding the police, that we fund the police, but we fund the right services. We fund services to assist the ones who really, really need that kind of help, mental health services. We really, really need to focus on that. That's not an election buzzword, Marcy. That's a need in our city.
Much more to talk about. I know Eric wants to weigh in. We got to move on. The morning show's never long enough for my liking, but I'll tell you what, the conversation won't end here. I promise to invite both of you back, and it sounds like we need a larger conversation with more players involved as well. Eric, stay safe. Thank you very much for being here.
Yep.
Thank you. And Nasli, thank you very much.
Now, Marcy, keep up the good work. You keep the word out there, and that'll be a big help as well. CBC, thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Eric Fouliard in studio with us, owner of Daily Grind Coffee on Portage. Nasli Sharma is the general manager of hospitality for 12 Tim Hortons locations, and she's been involved also in a group that's looking at starting a South End biz. Let's get right to morning sports. Scott Regier is with us. Good morning.
Hey, Marcy.
So let's start with tennis and a stunning result down under.
Yeah, Novak Djokovic out at the Australian Open, the tournament's most successful player ever. Had been eliminated in the semifinals by Italy's Yannick Sinner, and the match, frankly, wasn't even close. Djokovic had won all 10 semifinals and finals he'd played previously at Rod Laver Arena. Not only does this deny him a chance to pass Margaret Court for the most Grand Slams ever, regardless of gender, but it ends a run of dominance by the big three. This will be the first men's final in Melbourne in 19 years, not featuring a name Djokovic, Nadal, or Federer. So, is this the end of an era? Here's Djokovic.
I don't know. This tournament hasn't been up to my standard or criteria or the level that I would normally play or expect myself to play, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the beginning of the end, as some people like to call it. But let's see what happens in the rest of the season.
Yannick Sinner will, meanwhile, play Daniil Medvedev, the Russian, in Sunday's final after Medvedev just beat Germany's Alex Zverev in another semifinal in a firecracker of a match, 5 sets long. Now, Medvedev's 27. I don't necessarily see him as part of the next generation following the big three, but Sinner qualifies. He's 22. And remember, Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal, they were no older than 22 when they started winning their Grand Slams. So, boy, a little seismic shift in tennis today.
Let's move to Olympic news, Scott. What are you focusing on with the Paris Games opening now 6 months from today?
Whether Russians will be competing, Marcy, and if so, how many will compete. Because of the invasion of Ukraine, the International Olympic Committee wants to exclude athletes who have ties to the military or who have supported the war on social media. The IOC has appointed what it calls independent analysts to vet potential Olympic participants. Those that make it through the vetting process will only be allowed to compete as neutral athletes. It's actually a relaxed stance from the IOC, which right after the invasion of Ukraine banned Russians entirely from future Olympic involvement. Still, Russian Olympic Committee President Stanislav Pozniakov says it is far from enough.
We regard the decision of the International Olympic Committee as an acknowledgement of their own mistakes, but the parameters and criteria announced for the return of Russians to international competitions are absolutely unacceptable. Neutral status is an obvious discrimination based on nationality and violation of basic human rights, which has been repeatedly pointed out by international humanitarian experts.
As we mull that over, the IOC says 6 Russians and 5 Belarusians have already qualified for the Paris Games, which, as mentioned, are 6 months from today.
And to football, fans don't have to wait much longer. We're going to find out who's going to play in the Super Bowl soon.
Yeah, no, by the end of the weekend, we'll know, Marcy, who will compete in the big game February 11th in Las Vegas. As some believe, though, we may already know. Online conspiracy posits that the Super Bowl logo... You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, go.
So a Super Bowl logo in recent years has added color. It used to just be a cookie cutter format. And since the colors came in, 2021, those colors for the Super Bowl logo were yellow, orange, and black. Guess what? The yellow-clad Rams beat the orange and black Bengals that year. Next year, Super Bowl logo red and green. Kansas City beats Philadelphia that year. This year's logo is purple and red, the colors of the Baltimore Ravens and San Francisco 49ers. If the Niners beat Detroit and Ravens top Kansas City, we've got to bring Scully and Mulder into the fold.
The truth is out there.
The truth is out there.
Take care. Thank you.
You bet. You too.
The CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's still -4 downtown, cloudy with the risk of freezing drizzle again today, much like yesterday. The owner of a St. James coffee shop says he's taking extra precautions after the death of a restaurant owner this week. Eric Fulliard owns Daily Grind just down the street from where the owner of Cork and Flame died Wednesday. Kyriakis Voyajakis suffered what police say was a medical emergency after an altercation with a male. Now, while Fulliard's business has only been hit by a rash of petty crime over the last couple of years, he sees the rise in violent crime all around him.
Common people have their blindfolds on. I don't think they want to know how bad it is. When I talk about it, people cringe. I think it's about the public being told, and repeatedly, this is bad.
A suspect was taken into custody after the altercation at Cork and Flame, but police have not laid any charges as they continue to investigate and wait for the results of an autopsy. First Nations leaders and families are urging governments to act quickly on a new report outlining how to search a Winnipeg area landfill for the remains of 2 First Nations women. The report identifies 2 paths forward, including one on an expedited timeline on how to search Prairie Green landfill. It's believed the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron are buried there after they were killed by an alleged serial killer. The group says it's time for governments to fund the search. Myron's grandma, Donna Bartlett, says they shouldn't have to keep begging.
I really want my girl home. We need closure. My babies need closure. Her children are hurting to this day.
The report includes details on equipment and land acquisition needed to build a plant where landfill materials would be reviewed, but the report was not released publicly. A Winnipeg man who murdered a woman pregnant with his child will not be allowed to apply for early parole eligibility. Nathaniel Plourde is 15 years into a life sentence for the 2007 killing of 24-year-old Roxanne Fernando. A 12-person jury considered the now 36-year-old's bid for early parole eligibility. That bid was denied this week. Plourde beat Fernando to death with a monkey wrench while they were on what she thought was a date. In court, he admitted last week to planning the attack for weeks, saying he wanted her dead because of the pregnancy. Plourde had applied to seek early parole under the faint hope clause in Canada's criminal code. The International Court of Justice has issued a highly anticipated ruling on a case stemming from the Israel-Hamas war. The ruling does not include a call for an immediate ceasefire, but there are other provisions. Joan Donoghue is the president of the International Court of Justice.
By 16 votes to 1, the State of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to ensure the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
Now, the UN's High Court also decided today it will hear the case brought forward by South Africa. It accuses Israel of genocide. Israel had asked for that case to be dismissed. The court says Israel has denied committing genocide and asked the court to throw the case out. You can hear the latest on this developing story coming up on World Report at 8. King Charles is checked into hospital for his scheduled prostate operation. Buckingham Palace is thanking all well-wishers, but says it won't be giving progress updates until the King's treatment is ended. The King's surgery was announced last week. Well, the queen of all drag queens was crowned last night in Winnipeg.
Ruby Chopsticks.
Ruby Chopsticks, the first ever drag artist in residence by the Rainbow Resource Centre. Since learning about the art form and starting to perform in 2018, the second-generation Vietnamese Canadian says drag is their calling.
Growing up, it was just a lot of being put into a mold of you could only be these specific things. Like being Asian, you can only be a doctor, you can be a dentist, you can be in science, but you can't be anything else. So the representation just matters so much because then it just shows that you could do anything.
The year-long position was created to help uplift drag performers in Winnipeg and celebrate drag as an art form. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adiemi, let's get back into the regional forecast now on this Friday morning.
Yep, it is -4 degrees in Winnipeg under mainly cloudy skies. Be sure to grab a tea or a cup of coffee and bundle up as you start your day. Expect that mainly conditions to continue all through the day with a slight chance of snow this morning and then possibly mixed with freezing drizzle. Don't forget fog patches later will be appearing tonight. Brandon is currently at -9 degrees, clearing this more close to noon period, and then there's a risk of freezing drizzle also for people, for folks in Brandon. You're heading to a high of -2. Thompson is currently at -6, heading to a high of -5. Churchill is at -19. Heading to a high of -10. Gimley's at -5, heading to a high of -1. Duffin is at -12, heading to a high of a low of -7 later tonight. Steinbach is at -4, heading to a high of -1, and Morris is at -4, heading to a high of +1.
Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on now in the commute. You did have some calls.
Yeah, but they've mostly been positive calls, actually, overall. Sean, the friendly neighborhood air compressor guy, phoned to say just traffic is flowing well, which is nice to hear.
Yeah,
actually.
for sure.
Also flowing well is the window washer fluid, says Alice. Lots of that coming out. She said so far the streets are good, but she's using lots of that. Just a reminder, maybe keep some in your back if you stop to pick up some gas or something like that. Maybe also pick up some window washer fluid because, well, you're going through it with this weather. But if you see anything else going on out there, also asking folks for what they're seeing out there on the trails, particularly the ski trails, because it's a bit of a late season.
Friday.
And it's Friday. Curious what's going on. Let me know what you're seeing out there. The number to call, 204-788-3093.
All right, Corey Funk covering the commute this morning. He's also our show director. 23 minutes now to 8 o'clock. And for the past 12 years, the Forks, speaking of getting outside and enjoying it, the Forks has been finding creative ways to keep Manitobans warm in the cold. The result is the 2024 annual Warming Huts, an arts and architecture competition on ice. Now, this year, there were over 200 submissions from all around the world, and the top 6 are featured on the ice. One of them is called Circling Above Us. It is by a father and son team, Wayne and Jordan Stranger from Peguis First Nation. CBC's Jim Agapito is out at the Forks this morning at ice level for the unveiling. Hi, Jim. What's it like out there this morning?
You know, it's really cool to see all these cool warming huts around us. You know, it's a great way to keep yourself warm, you know, while you're skating on the trail. And here I have Jordan Stranger. Hello.
Good morning.
Jordan, I've got to ask, the name is called Circling Above Us. Can you tell us what that means?
It's related to my family, and I think eagles have always been a big part of our lives, and they've shown up in times of change and joy. And that's kind of what we wanted to share with the people here, is to keep them warm and give them a piece of that joy.
So if you could describe for us, you know, what this looks like, because it's beautiful, could you do that for our audiences?
Yeah, so it's a big eagle made out of branches of willows and cedar and Christmas trees. And it kind of has its wings kind of wrapped in a circle, you know, around the people to give them shelter. And there's a beautiful fire here in the center with some sacred stones. Keep everybody safe. And we have some benches kind of resembling those eagle talons and his big head up at the top.
So how much time did it take to come up with this idea and to design this for the warming hut competition?
I think in total it took about a couple months from concept to the actual physical labor of building it. And everybody pulled through as a collaborative effort, and we came through down to the wire.
And what's it like collaborating with your father on something like this? A father and son team doing something like this. What was that like?
I'm glad to have done it. We always wanted to do a project together, and this is one that we'll remember for a long time.
And why should people come down and check out this warming hut? I mean, it's such a cool thing, Why should they come down and check that out?
It's always nice to have something to see when you're out adventuring, especially on the trail. And I encourage people to come down to see the other structures here as well, other than ours. It's really cool to see a lot of creative minds put something like this together, and it's nice to have here. It's really good.
Okay, Jordan, are you going to come down and skate the trail?
Maybe after I rest for a bit, yeah.
Well, there you have it. Come down, check out these nice warming huts, and keep yourself warm while you're on the trail, skating at the Forks.
You know what, Jim? I'm watching you on our YouTube feed this morning so I can see you as well as talk to you here on the radio, but it looks lovely this morning. You guys are down there with a fire burning. Are people skating, or is Winnipeg not quite up yet?
There's no one out here yet, but it looks like there's more people coming down. I mean, it's a perfect morning to do this. It's so beautiful, and you can keep yourself so warm by this fire. Oh, it's gorgeous, Marcy. I wish you were here beside me.
Don't make it bigger, though, okay? Because the way the eagle's built with all that greenery, below its big head up there, I'm a little nervous it's going to start on fire. So take it easy down there. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
Yeah, and thanks to Jordan as well. This is really something to see. It's beautiful. And I know that Jordan has done a number of different installations all around town and different artworks. I believe he had an installation out of ice, if I'm remembering correctly, or ice and metal at Kildonan Park previously. But we're talking this morning, and Jim Agapito down live at the Forks this morning, learning more about the Eagle. And this is one of the warming huts that's been created. It's actually called Circling Above Us Warming Hut. Pardon me, that's the proper name. If you want to check out any of the warming huts at the Forks, you can go to the Forks website, and they have them all unveiled and listed for 2024.
Hi, I'm Leah.
And I'm Phelan. We're the hosts of the irreverent history podcast, The Secret Life of Canada.
We've covered everything from the history behind the iconic Bay blanket to why blackface is still a thing, and how all our histories can be traced back to our relationship with water.
Oh, you forgot about the controversial debate over which dessert is the most Canadian, the butter tart or the Nanaimo bar.
Yes, I did forget that. That was intense.
The Secret Life of Canada. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
That's hard. I was going to weigh in on that question, but I don't know. I'm an equal lover of butter tarts and Nanaimo bars, personally speaking. -4 is the temperature right now. We have had a lot of feedback to our series on youth violence, on what's going on out there and how we can do better for young people in our city, in our province. We have a part 2 interview coming up after 8 o'clock on the show. This is specifically around a program out of Toronto as we ask the question, how can child and youth violence be stopped? One scientist helped co-found an intervention that helps stop aggressive children that show violent potential. So how do you identify them, and how did they quantify why this works, where they've seen success? There is empirical data to show that this works. It's a method that has been, as I mentioned, out of Toronto, and they're looking to have interest in bringing it to Manitoba. We're going to learn all about it after 8 o'clock. If you are out there listening and you want to weigh in on our series, especially if you're a teacher, I know we've also done some things around what's happening in schools. You can always call us on our listener line, 788-3205, as our series continues. But that is coming up after 8. Next, still plenty of shows left to see this weekend at Winterruption. We have 5 pairs of tickets to give away to see American rock band Making Movies. They're known for creating Americana with a twist, capturing the musical experience from all across the Americas. And if you want to check them out at the West End Cultural Center on Sunday, January 28th, that's this Sunday, all you have to do is email us, win@cbc.ca, Win at cbc.ca if you're looking for something warm to do on this cool weekend. And while you do, why not tell us about your favorite concert-going experience? Always love to have those stories to share on the air. Here's Making Movies in Medicina.
Cerré la puerta a enemigos de la vida, abrí la puerta a los demás. Todos nacimos en locura colectiva, todos nacimos para llorar. Esa música es mi medicina, me transporta a Panamá. El recuerdo de una madrugada, inmaculada y bella. Un tiempo lleno de inocencia y alegría, mirando a las estrellas. Les agradezco a todos por la confianza, por apoyarnos sin juzgar. Esta música es mi medicina, que les sirva para gozar. Que les sirva para gozar.
Making Movies, that's the name of the group. The tune is called Medicina, and if you want to check them out, they're playing at the West End Cultural Center on Sunday night as part of Winterruption. And you can win tickets. It's Friday. We're in a good mood. It's actually not why. We have tickets that we've been giving away all week. But we are in a good mood Friday. So we have 5 pairs that you can win this morning. Win at cbc.ca is the only way to enter. Win at cbc.ca. Our show director is going to be in touch with the winners. We're asking you, though, while you write in, to tell us about your favorite concert-going experience. So I'm hoping we'll have some stories to share on the air. The only way to enter is by email.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Liftoff. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1, and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
Time right now is 13 minutes to 8 o'clock. It is the last Friday in January, and it's cloudy and -4 in Winnipeg. Brandon's misty -8, Thompson's misty and -6 degrees. For the day in Winnipeg, a high of -2, and as Abby's been saying, just a slight chance we'll see some snow and freezing drizzle hanging around this morning. 788-3093 if you need to update the commute. Well, as you have been hearing in the news, both nationally and locally, tonight on the Fifth Estate on CBC, co-host Stephen D'Souza has a new investigation that is going to shed light on a tragedy that unfolded in our province. 2 years ago, the Patel family, Jagdish, his wife Vaishali, their 11-year-old daughter Vihangi, and their 3-year-old son Dharmeek, tragically froze to death. They were attempting to cross the border into the United States from Manitoba. The story exposed a growing problem of migrants from India using Canada as a pipeline to sneak into the U.S. and the human smuggling networks that coordinate the often risky and dangerous journey. Now, so far, no one has been arrested in Canada related to the family's death. Indian police, though, have arrested some members of the smuggling network, but so far the suspects in Canada have remained at large and out of the spotlight. That is until now. CBC's The Fifth Estate has tracked down one of the men that Indian police say played a key role in the Patel family's journey. And it turns out that he's living a seemingly ordinary life just outside of Toronto. I spoke to Stephen D'Souza about the details.
Good morning, Marcy.
So remind us what happened to the Patels.
So this is a family of 4 that lived in a small village called Dingucha in the Indian state of Gujarat, and they wanted to go to the U.S. They wanted to take their family, their 2 young children, and build a life for themselves there. And there's a lot of societal pressure in that part of India to live the American dream. And so because the legal route is so difficult, they turned to smugglers who arranged a tourist visa for them. And so they arrived in Toronto, and for about 4 days they were shuttled around the Toronto area before they were taken to a remote area just outside of Emerson. And it was a bitter winter storm that night. The temperatures plunged to minus 35, and we talked to locals who didn't even want to go out in that weather. Yet here's a family that had probably never seen snow before, wearing inappropriate clothing, sent out and told to cross a field, saying that the promise of a better life was not that far away. And as we know, they didn't survive.
Has anyone been arrested?
There's only been one arrest in North America, and that was a man on the U.S. side named Steve Shand. He's alleged to have been the driver that was there to pick up the group of migrants. There was the family of 4, the Patels, and then there were 7 other migrants as well who were picked up by Border Patrol who survived the crossing. But last year, around the 1-year anniversary, Indian police arrested 3 men in India who they allege were part of the smuggling network that took care of the Indian leg of the journey. Important for us is that Indian police named 2 suspects in Canada. One was a man named Fennel Patel, and they accused him of culpable homicide, human trafficking, conspiracy, and more, but Indian police didn't know where he was, and so they wanted the RCMP's help.
Now, you actually tracked down Fennel Patel. How did you do that?
We started with a name, and the name is very common. It's almost like Jack Smith, and so we needed more information. So over the course of a year, we were able to gather police reports, exclusive, never before seen photos. We were able to match the suspect's name and his birth date to public records in Canada. And so we ended up finding a residence just outside of Toronto. And so what we ended up doing was actually going out and watching the home and seeing if the person who lived at this address that was registered in his name is the same person that Indian police allege was there the night the family was set out into the cold. And so when we confirmed that, we went and approached him. Take a listen. Fennel, my name's Stephen D'Souza. I'm with CBC News, the Fifth Estate. Indian police are accusing you of driving the Indian family, the Patel family, to the border. Did you drive them to the border, sir? Did you leave them out there to die? Did you drive them to the cold and leave them behind, sir?
Did he respond at all to you?
No, he was on his phone coming down his driveway, and he basically sort of mouthed the word no, turned his back to us and walked back into his house, and never gave us a response. And even to follow-up calls and letters, we've still not heard a response from him.
Has he been charged in Canada, or is he under investigation?
We've been in touch with the RCMP immediately after we made that approach to inform them that we had located Fennel Patel. And at the time when Fennel Patel was first named by Indian police, they said that they were aware of the arrest in India, but they didn't give us more information. And this time was not much different. All they would say is that the investigation is ongoing, that they're looking at all available leads, but they wouldn't confirm, A, that they even know where Fennel Patel is, or that he's under investigation. So there's still a lot of questions, and they essentially said they do the continuing investigation. They can't provide us any more details.
Why haven't the RCMP moved in and arrested him?
That really is the key question right now. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes that perhaps we don't know about. And so to get a better sense of that, we talked to an immigration lawyer named Deepak Ahluwalia, who has experience in these kinds of migrant cases. Here's some of what he told us.
A lot of things that happen in the background that we may not be privy to, and perhaps RCMP is only acting on orders that they're getting. But ultimately, the way I see it is, if this was a Canadian citizen family that died, during that time, well, there wouldn't have been a difference. They would have gone all in, and that person would have been arrested in jail right now. So I don't see any difference that this family came from India and died.
So there could be a case where the RCMP is still waiting for more information from Indian police, or the RCMP's own investigation is still ongoing. There's still a lot we don't know. And Deepak Ahluwalia worries that if police don't move in quickly, the suspect who's facing these very serious allegations could simply disappear.
We'll be watching with high interest and heavy hearts for Manitoba. Thank you very much for updating us on your investigation thus far.
Thank you so much.
Stephen D'Souza, I was in conversation with him yesterday for the details of what is coming up tonight. A co-host of The Fifth Estate, joining us from Toronto. Search for Smugglers. Search for the Smugglers airs tonight at 9 o'clock on The Fifth Estate on CBC Television. You can stream it on YouTube this afternoon, starting at noon.
Forget your fancy indoor rinks, you Bonspiel newbies. Iron Man outdoor curling is for those who hurry hard to curl on the frozen river.
Why are you talking like that?
I'm making the Iron Man outdoor curling promo sound tougher.
But it's basically a fun spiel on the ice that everyone will enjoy. February 2nd to 4th. CBC is a proud sponsor.
Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more. Sorry, Janet.
So I think the correct phrasing is we did a thing, Abby, right?
Yeah, we did a thing, and I just said to myself, I need to be on a team after doing that thing. Because all I just want to do is, hurry hard! I just want to say that.
What we're referring to, and Abby's saying he needs to be on a curling team after our thing, is because we made a video. That's the thing. And you can check it out on my Facebook page. And we're hoping it'll prompt you to make a video. Believe me, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. What we're trying to get you to do is grab a broom and show us how you, Abby?
You just show how you hurry hard, and you give us the hurry hard. If you can beat mine, I think mine is the best.
You've got it down the hurry hard, y'all.
That's all I want to join the team. I'm going to be that guy.
I like it. Now listen, if we actually do get a team in the future, even though you and I like can offer nothing with curling, apparently we have a ringer.
We have the ringer already.
Did you curl for a long time, Corey?
I have curled. I curled in a teenager at Elmwood Curling Club. Shout out to Elmwood.
Yes.
Also skipped my high school curling team, but we were real bad.
Yes.
Who cares? You were a skip even.
I know, but we got shut out by Glenlawn once. And I still lose sleep over it.
Okay, I'm talking in circles. I need to be clear here about what we want the listeners to do. Besides come and cheer once we clearly set up our curling team, me, you, and Abby, Corey. We want you to grab a broom, any broom. Everyone's got a broom somewhere, at your office, at your house. We want you to make a little video. For inspiration, you can look at our little video, Abby's amazing hurry hards. What we did is Abby swept me into the studio to get to do the show on time. That was our deal.
Hurry hard!
We are looking for you to, right on cue, we're looking for you to make a video. You could win a CBC Manitoba winter swag bag. So we've got these really cool toques. We've got mugs. We've got a bag. We've got a shirt. As we're gearing up, as you heard, to sponsor and be part of the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel February 2nd to 4th. So sweep your spouse, sweep your coworker, sweep your cat. The possibilities are endless. Sweep yourself running for the bus. And thanks to Abby and Chloe for getting me into the studio on time to start the show and our video. If you want some inspiration, you can check out my Facebook page for the video. But the way to enter to win the swag bag is to send your videos. Doesn't have to be fancy. We want to hear your hurry hards and see your sweeping. But send your videos to win@cbc.ca. So use this weekend wisely. Maybe you'll win. Win@cbc.ca to send your videos, and we'll try to be sharing those, of course, on YouTube. So have fun and hurry hard. Let's get into what's happening with Heather Wells now in our developing news and our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the death of a restaurant owner in St. James has people in Winnipeg's hospitality industry talking about crime and safety. Police say Kyriakos Voyajakis died Wednesday after an altercation with a man outside Cork and Flame on Portage Avenue. Now, they haven't released any details about what may have led to that fight. We're going to hear some reaction from those in the restaurant industry. First Nations leaders and families are urging governments to act quickly on a new report outlining how to search a Winnipeg area landfill for the remains of 2 First Nations women. The report identifies 2 paths forward, including one on an expedited timeline. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we're talking about the death of the restaurant owner, but after 8, it was another crime that shocked Manitobans. A 14-year-old girl stabbed and killed on a downtown Winnipeg street, allegedly by a 17-year-old boy who's been charged now with second-degree murder. But ultimately, in the bigger picture, who's responsible?
When we see things happen in schools, or we hear in the media of the 14-year-old girl, it didn't happen overnight. We didn't do our job, and who then is accountable for that? Think about it. We are.
A scientific scientific data that shows the root causes of youth violence is something we have coming up. And we're going to learn more about a Canadian intervention that apparently works, and they've measured this. So that's coming up as our ongoing series on youth violence continues and how we can all do better. It is -4 in Winnipeg. As mentioned, it's cloudy, 788-3093 if you need to update traffic. Stay with us. World Report's next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Kim Thuy's best-selling novel Rue has now been made into a film. Rue is based on Kim's own life story of fleeing with her family during the Vietnam War. She'll be here to talk about what it was like to step back into the rooms she left as a kid.
I didn't know how, but I thought I was in Saigon.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
They are amazing to watch. The swimmer winning races at the age of 99 or the pole vaulter competing into their 80s. Researchers say it's never too late to start exercising, even if you're not at this elite level. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm John Northcott. We begin in The Hague, where South Africa is celebrating a decision. The International Court of Justice says it will hear the genocide case brought forward against Israel. In the meantime, it has ordered Israel to take measures to protect Palestinians in Gaza. Naledi Pandor is South Africa's Minister of International Relations. She says she would have liked an order of a ceasefire, but
the moment is now ripe for there to be negotiations for a two-state solution to end this conflict decisively.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country will continue to defend itself while respecting international law.
Our war is against Hamas terrorists, not against Palestinian civilians. We will continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance and to do our utmost to keep civilians out of harm's way, even as Hamas uses civilians as human shields.
But his national security minister's response was just 2 words on social media: Hague Schmeg. Chris Brown is in Jerusalem with the details on the court hearing.
Justice Joan Donoghue began by reading the decision saying the International Court of Justice is acutely aware of the human tragedy in Gaza and affirmed that the court was very concerned about the loss of life and suffering. Israel has said that South Africa's claims of genocide are absurd and obscene, and it wanted the case thrown out, but the court disagreed with that. It says at least some of Israel's actions in Gaza might be capable of falling within the scope of the Genocide Convention. It noted there are more than 26,000 dead, along with a huge number of Palestinian institutions such as schools and buildings destroyed. And it also noted that the humanitarian situation is at risk of deteriorating further. In determining its interim orders, the court cited statements by Israeli cabinet ministers, including Yoav Gallant, who in October announced a complete siege and said, "I have released all restraints. We are fighting human animals," he was quoted as saying in the court. And the court determined that there is a real and imminent risk to Palestinians unless it made some provisional measures. Crucially for Israel, the court did not order Israel to suspend its military operations in Gaza, as South Africa had asked, but it did rule that Israel must take measures to improve the humanitarian situation. The court also said Israel must preserve any evidence of alleged genocide and take measures to punish anyone who incites genocide. And finally, the court ordered that Israel submit a report to the court within a month on its actions. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has just walked by reporters on Parliament Hill. He did not respond to the ruling.
Mr. Prime Minister, any comment on the ICJ ruling? What will Canada do to abide by the ICJ ruling, Prime Minister? Good to see you guys.
There have been calls for Trudeau to clarify the government's stance on the case before the ICJ. Global Affairs has only said Canada will abide by all rulings arising from the case. In other news, CBC News has learned that Kenneth Law is facing at least one upgraded charge of first-degree murder. The Ontario man is accused of helping people take their own lives. Law is suspected of having connected to dozens of people around the world. Thomas Dagla has the latest.
It's not clear how many charges will be upgraded, but CBC News has confirmed Kenneth Law is now facing at least one charge of first-degree murder in connection with a death in Ontario. Until now, the former Toronto hotel cook was charged with both second-degree murder and counseling or aiding suicide in connection with 14 deaths across the province. Law has been in custody since last May after investigators said he sold a toxic substance and items for self-harm. Now authorities appear to be again taking a new approach to this case. Peel Regional Police declined to provide any details last night, but in December, when police first added murder charges, lead investigator Inspector Simon James pointed to newly uncovered information.
We're constantly assessing evidence. It's a very ongoing investigation. I can't speak to that evidence at this time to preserve the investigation.
Law's products are suspected of being connected to at least 124 deaths in Canada, the U.S., Britain, Italy, Ireland, New Zealand, and elsewhere. David Parfitt in England lost his son Tom in 2021.
There's a clear link with Law. He knew what he was doing when he sent my son a suicide kit.
The new first-degree murder charge means Ontario authorities consider Law carried out a homicide that was both planned and deliberate. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
The U.S. state of Alabama carried out a controversial execution last night.
I've never, ever seen anything like that. That was absolute torture, and torture is evil.
That's Jeff Hood describing the final moments of Kenneth Smith's life. Hood was a witness to the execution, which was carried out with the use of nitrogen gas, which the United Nations, among others, considers cruel and inhuman. Hood says the execution went badly, with Smith heaving back and forth. But Alabama Corrections Commissioner John Hamm says it all went as planned. He's the Corrections Commissioner.
He struggled against his restraints a little bit, but there's some involuntary movement and some agonal breathing, so that was all expected and is in the side effects that we've seen or researched on nitrogen hypoxia. So nothing was out of the ordinary what we were expecting.
In his final statement, Smith said, quote, "Tonight, Alabama caused humanity to take a step backward." Smith had been on death row since the mid-1990s after being found guilty of murder. In Ottawa, the projected lifetime cost of operating the Air Force's fleet of Cyclone helicopters continues to balloon. The CBC's Murray Brewster digs into the latest from the Department of National Defence and the reaction.
The Air Force still reports confidence in that platform and in the Cyclone.
Defense Minister Bill Blair attempting to put the best face on growing concerns about the Air Force's often delayed, more costly maritime helicopters. The Defense Department was forced to revise its public estimates on the full ownership cost of the Cyclone after CBC News reported last week that estimates exceeded $14.8 billion. That was up from a previous estimate of $9 billion. At the time, CBC had asked for clarification, but National Defense only provided the new figures this week. The estimate now sits at $15.9 billion.
The escalating cost, particularly over life cycle, of maintaining a lot of military equipment, including the Cyclone, is deeply concerning to me.
Deeply concerning, but not enough for the Defense Department to consider looking for another aircraft.
They're addicted to it.
Retired Colonel Larry McWaugh, a former pilot and longtime critic of the Cyclone.
The bureaucracy that's responsible for this project is doing everything in its power to convince the authorities, the politics, and that the aircraft, as purchased, was viable.
McWaugh also says there are a whole series of other considerations that make canceling the program unlikely. Among them, the Navy's planned new frigates are specifically designed to carry the Cyclone. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
And finally, electric vehicle drivers could be paying twice as much for the same charge, depending on where they plug in. That's the latest finding from the team at CBC's Marketplace. Now, for the first time, this country's Environment Minister is hinting at some standardization. Charles Seagro has the story.
We are charging. Plugging in. It's a common practice for an increasing number of Canadians to power up their electric vehicles at public charging stations like this one. But at what cost?
It's a patchwork of approaches still.
That, according to Joanna Kiriazis of Clean Energy Canada.
Well, we're still working out the kinks.
Kinks that include a range of billing practices, some by the minute, some by the hour, and about 25% of Canada's public chargers currently bill by the kilowatt hours. What experts, including Curiosities, agree is the fairest. It ensures consumers are paying for the energy they get, not the time it takes.
Moving towards this more standardized approach helps consumers more easily compare pricing across different charging station providers.
Marketplace's own price comparison of fast chargers found prices ranging from 25 to 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Electricity prices vary across the country and are set by the provinces, but Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault says standardization would help consumers better compare prices.
Can we impose this on provinces and territories? I don't think so, but we can work with them to try and ensure that we have the most efficient system in terms of tarification across the country.
As Canada races toward a zero-emission future, Guilbeault admits this country's public charging infrastructure needs to catch up.
I want us to move faster, of course.
Chelsea Agro, CBC News, Toronto.
And you can watch the full Marketplace story tonight at 8 p.m., 8:30 in Newfoundland on CBC TV and CBC Gem. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, cbcnews.ca, including the latest on the ICJ decision. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us on this mild Friday, last one in January. Not that it's felt like the usual one of the coldest months of the year in Manitoba. It's been pretty mild. Wow. Thanks for being with us. This half hour on the show, we're going to continue our series looking at youth violence and the roots of youth violence. How can it be stopped? One scientist helped co-found an intervention that helps stop aggressive children that show violent potential. What does that mean, though? How do they identify the kids, and what's this method? There's empirical data to show that it works. We're going to learn all about it. It's called SNAP, Stop Now and Plan. So stay tuned. That's part 2 of an interview with a person that we had on yesterday that's behind all of this. She's a child and youth mental health specialist out of Toronto, and she's founder of this program. In addition, this half hour, we will hear more analysis of the decision that you may have just heard about on World Report if you're just getting up. The top court for the UN today ordering Israel to take measures to prevent and punish direct incitement of genocide in its war in Gaza, although it did stop short of ordering a ceasefire in a case brought forth by South Africa. So obviously high interest in this, and we will hear more analysis with Margaret Evans from CBC and Heather Hiscox coming up this half hour. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells with local news and headlines. Hi there.
Good morning. Well, the cousin of a First Nations woman whose remains are believed to be in a Winnipeg area landfill says it's time for the mayor to step up. Police say the bodies of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris are in the Prairie Green landfill. Melissa Robinson, Harris's cousin, wants the city and the mayor to deliver on a promise made months ago when Scott Gillingham committed to setting aside land where a structure could be built to support a search. So we'll hear more about that. Also, the death of a restaurant owner in St. James has people in this city's hospitality industry talking crime and safety. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi, the forecast for today?
As we're approaching the peak of rush hour, the temperature is stuck at -4 degrees. And if we look at the rest of the day, it's going to be mainly cloudy. That condition is going to stay with us with that 30% chance of light snow tapering off later in the day. But the freezing drizzle is a risk. And also we're expecting fog patches to lift later this morning, making way for a high of -2. And as we move into the night, expect that partly cloudy skies to creep in on us, but then it's going to clear before tomorrow morning. But just keep an eye out for developing fog patches. Winnipeg currently is at -4 degrees.
Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
All right, Corey Funk, the commute.
So far, the commute's been pretty smooth on the highways and the roads so far. I did get a call from Morgan, who's on bike this morning, and said that the bike lanes, though, particularly on Balmoral, kind of on the way to the Granite there, are actually pretty much impassable right now because they're so mushy. You just can't really bike through, kind of like biking through kind of weird, mushy sand. So his best bet was actually to take the road. So just heads up there if you are heading down that bike lane in that part of the city. But if you see anything else going on out there, if you're walking, biking, driving, if you plan to ski this weekend, tell me what you've seen on the trails so far. Very curious. Might be more like water skiing, but also might be pretty nice, kind of depending where you are in the province.
Hydroplaning playing along?
Yeah, exactly. Give me a call and let me know, and I'll let folks know. 204-788-3093.
Now, we missed this email earlier, so apologies. I'm going to read it out just in case it's still going to be affecting you in the Roblin Russell area. Park West School Division today has canceled buses. Schools are open, so apology we didn't get that on earlier, but buses canceled in Park West. They're saying due to poor visibility conditions in much of the division, so that's why they've canceled buses for today. Once again, as Corey mentioned, issues on your commute can be called in to 788-3093. Well, youth violence is on the rise. Experts say it's a complex problem to solve. The stabbing death of a 14-year-old girl last month in Winnipeg, allegedly by a 17-year-old teen who's now been charged with second-degree murder, is an example of that here in our home. Court had heard the day before the girl died, that she was involved in the child welfare system and she'd been waiting for an emergency placement. Her death has a lot of people asking not only why youth violence is climbing, but what we can do to stop it. My next guest says an intervention has to be evidence-based, and that's critical to know what works and what doesn't. Lena Ojimeri is the child and youth mental health specialist in Toronto, one of them rather, and co-founder of SNAP. It stands for Stop Now and Plan. It's an intervention for aggressive kids and teens. Now, we heard part one of her interview yesterday. We talked to her, and she spoke in this part about how violent behaviors develop from a young age. So before we turn to SNAP, here's a small part to set this up.
Any kindergarten teacher can tell you when they're concerned about a child. You see at around 6 or 7, they start to engage in some disruptive behavior, aggression. And then before their 9th birthday, that's when they get in trouble. Maybe they're engaging in theft or shoplifting. And then just before their 12th birthday is where they commit a serious delinquent act. And at 14 and a half, they're in court for committing a serious violent offense. 7 years of warning, 7-year incubation period. What is so critical, Marcy, is think about how many individuals, how many adults, how many educators, family members, etc., even your community, were surrounding that child between that 7 years. And I think we have to really think strongly about how do we create safe and caring and thriving environments for all our children.
And now today, part 2 of our interview with Lena Ojimeri about how to help kids and intervene before it's too late.
So SNAP is all about teaching children and their families and educators how to stop and think before they act and make better choices in the moment. So that's the strategy of SNAP, which we teach the children in a 12 to 13 week children's group. And at the same time, the parents are coming to a concurrent parent group or caregiver group where they too are learning the SNAP strategy so they can support their children and also support themselves. Think about it, we as parents, because it's okay. It's normal to feel angry. It's normal to feel upset, but it's how we handle it.
What evidence is it based on that this approach, Stop Now and Plan, is effective? What are you finding?
We scanned the literature to determine what was working and what was not working. And so cognitive behavioral therapy worked. We need to think about attachment. And so what we do is the kids come to a 13-week children's group. The parents then come to the 13-week parent group, and they also learn the strategy, but also effective parent management strategies, how to deal with school, because a lot of these kids are struggling in school. We also provide family counseling. We also provide community hookup and engagement in the community. And one of the things I absolutely love is we also have something called SNAP Youth Leadership, which is once the kids graduate from SNAP, so they're now 12 and older, what we do is we continue to potentially work with them because we know that if kids are going to slip, the research shows they're going to slip around 14 and a half. And so how do you keep the highest risk kids engaged in services for as long as they need it so you don't have this revolving door?
Will this work if the family's not involved?
We know from our research, if the family is involved or engaged, the better the outcomes. The better the outcomes for the child, the better the outcomes for the family. The outcomes, if this program is done right, the outcomes are excellent. And what we do is we use standardized measures, which is that measurement-based care approach. And when we do that, we have found extreme decreases in what we call externalizing behaviors. So things like aggression and rule breaking and conduct problems, and decreases in irritability and oppositional behavior, with an ultimate goal of ensuring that these kids don't flip into the juvenile justice system. But we've also seen an uptake and an increase in self-control, emotion regulation, problem solving, the improvement in the executive functioning, and better social skills, with a hopeful outcome at better school success, which we see, but also relationships, and improved relationships between the parent and caregiver, but also educators. So it goes hand in hand, and with regards to parent management. So lots of great stuff. But the brain study, I mean, everybody's so excited about this because it's new, this neuroscience stuff. We've been engaged with the Hospital for Sick Children. We've been engaged with Center for Addiction and Mental Health, and University of Toronto, and they've done some studies on our SNAP children. First studies used EEG studies, and actually they found that children in SNAP improved after treatment, showed normalized activity in their brain, which was interesting, using an EEG methodology. So they saw that when kids came into the program, they were really processing from that ventral part of the brain, that fight, flight, and freeze. And in 13 weeks after the group, they studied them again. And what they found was there was a diminished reactivity in that part of the brain.
How old were the kids that you're talking about that were in the brain study? Like how early
They
did
were
you need
between
to...
8 and 12 years of age at that time. And then Dr. Nathan Kola from CAMH just did the most recent study published in 2022. And he actually used MRIs. And what he found was not only were there increased activity in the brain responsible for cognitive control, like that self-regulation, stop and thinking, but improvement in overall behavior of impulsivity and self-control. He saw actual structural changes in the frontal part of the brain known to be linked to self-control.
So overall, do you see violence among kids and teens getting better or worse? Like, where are we going from here?
How do we bring evidence-based programs into schools or into communities that need it? This is one part of the solution, which is we know it works, but we need to think as a community, how do we bring evidence-based programs like SNAP to communities right across this country? And as a community, how are you working together? Do you have a community hub where you bring together key stakeholders like child welfare, like community-based organizations, like recreation and organizations like that, but also police? Police play a critical role in this because they're the first point of contact these kids are going to run into if it's not already the schools. Because remember that point, 7 years of warning, 7-year incubation period. And when we see things happen in schools, or we hear in the media of the 14-year-old girl that you just talked about, it didn't happen overnight.
Or the 17-year-old that is accused in the case. Is any kid ever a lost cause?
No. I think that is
because I wonder if society writes kids off.
Yes.
If we're missing all of this 7 years incubation, then something is happening where somebody is saying someone's a lost cause. They have to along the way be giving up on the kids.
We missed the boat. We didn't do our job, and who then is accountable for that? Think about it. We are.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Marcy, and thank you for bringing this important topic to light.
Lena Anjamari, we had a full conversation. You can hear both parts on our CBC Listen app. She's a child and youth mental health specialist weighing in on our youth violence series. She's the director of the Child Development Institute in Toronto, and she's co-founder of what we were talking about in that segment of the interview, SNAP. Stop Now and Plan. It's an intervention for aggressive kids and teens. And as mentioned, if you want to hear both parts of our interview, check out the CBC Listen app.
Hi, I'm Pia Chattopadhyay, your host of the Sunday Magazine. Every weekend, we help you make sense of our changing world through conversations that cut deep and mine the ideas driving society, politics, and cultures today, with plenty of music, wonder, and fun along the way. So come along and join me for the Sunday Magazine, Sunday mornings at 9:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
8:23 a.m. is the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcusa with Pat. I almost said Pat. That's the first time. I knew it would happen eventually. Corey Funk, who's our show director behind the glass this morning, with Abby Adeyemi, and also Brad Lillies. Thank you, guys. In Winnipeg, we have snow grains. That's still sort of what why it looks kind of blue out there, that wintry blue look. And it's -4. It's going to stay mild today. Our high is going to be -2. Well, let's elaborate on the developing and news that's coming out internationally and nationally this morning. All eyes have been on the International Court of Justice as a preliminary ruling that has ordered Israel to do more to reduce deaths in Gaza was shared live. We want more analysis of this as it's just been developing in the last hour. So within the last half hour, here's a conversation between CBC Newsnet's Heather Hiscox, leading into some more analysis from Margaret Evans.
The allegation from South Africa is that Israel has committed genocidal acts in its war against Hamas in the war in Gaza. The large question of whether this does meet the threshold from genocide, that has not been decided today. We have to be very clear on that. This is not the broad question of genocide. But in the interim, South Africa asked the court to find that it had jurisdiction and there was urgency and it met the threshold of plausibility that it could bring in these provisional measures, emergency measures, to try to limit the loss of life and destruction in Gaza. And that is exactly what the court has done today. It has not gone so far as to order a ceasefire, but it has ordered 6 provisional measures against Israel, among them to get the military to ensure it is complying with the Genocide Convention in how it fights the war, to make sure that it is not causing harm to people in Gaza, that it urgently needs to get aid to people in Gaza, that Israel should prevent and punish any incitement that might be seen to be genocidal intent. So the comments, the statements, those are very important as well, and to report back to the court in a month's time. And it's interesting, many of these measures were met by very large majorities. Israel itself agreed with 2 of them in the vote, and the 17-member panel that made these decisions today. We're going to get some reaction from key stakeholders, but I want to bring in Margaret Evans, who's based in London now as our senior international correspondent. But Margaret, for years, was our Middle East correspondent. So, Margaret, your perspective from that historical perspective is very important. But I want to get overall your assessment of the ruling. As I just mentioned, did not order a ceasefire. Many people thought that would have been impossible anyway. But going as far as it did with its rebuke of how Israel has been waging this war, what did you hear, and what are the key aspects of this ruling?
Well, I think that that's right. It was not an order for a ceasefire, as you say, but it was very clear, an indication that the expectation of the court is that Israel will conduct its war in a very different manner than it has up to now. Basically, ensuring with immediate effect, said the court, that its military troops were not conducting anything that is covered or taking any action covered under the Genocide Act. And that's a long list, things like killing, grievous bodily harm, actions intended to destroy or to ensure the destruction of the group or the people, in this case, the Palestinians, obviously, the prevention of births. The rulings also included, again, with immediate action, a requirement for Israel to ensure humanitarian access. And throughout the hearing this morning, if you like, I'm not sure what you would call it, but the reading of the court's opinion, the judge, the Chief Judge Joe Donoghue, listed some of the reasoning behind the court's decision, as you said, taken with a large majority. And she relied heavily on documentation and reports by UN officials, including the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. And in those listings talked about some of the suffering and what we're witnessing on our screens of what's happening in Gaza. She talked about the injury to, again, quoting others in their reports, the injury to Palestinian children. She talked about a lost generation, about the forced displacement of nearly 2 million people, of the lack of access to potable water and to food supplies. So this was a very stark presentation of their decision-making process, in which she said that it was clear that the Palestinian population was very vulnerable, and also that there are indications that their situation could worsen.
So that's some analysis from CBC Newsnet's Margaret Evans and Heather Hiscox within the last half hour of the program. The judge that Margaret was referring to, all eyes on Joan Donoghue this morning, president of the International Court of Justice. She read out a preliminary ruling that did order Israel to do more to reduce deaths in Gaza. The ruling is binding but not enforceable. It did not call, as we've been saying, for a full ceasefire. So much analysis to come through the day. And if you want to read more, you can go nationally to cbc.ca. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We are live here in Winnipeg, downtown, on the show this Friday morning, where it's a really mild day. And thank you for joining us. Just a quick reminder that we are the sponsor of the Ironman Curling Bonspiel that is coming up very quickly next weekend. So we are encouraging you, as you think about attending the Ironman Outdoor Curling Bonspiel, to make a video for us. To entice you, we put together a really fun prize pack of all warm stuff, wintry and CBC, that you could win: t-shirt, toque, mug, bag. But to win, you have to enter a video. Enter a video at win@cbc.ca of your hurry hard. Grab a broom and sweep. So whether you're actually curling or in your daily life, sweeping your cat out of the room, sweeping your dog to the door, I don't know. Whatever you're sweeping, we want to see it. So have some fun, and to be inspired, check out my Facebook page. Win@cbc.ca to get those entries in. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is mostly cloudy, -4 still in downtown Winnipeg. We're headed to a high today of -2. There is still that risk of freezing drizzle. The owner of a St. James coffee shop says he'll take extra precautions after the death of a restaurant owner in his neighborhood this week. Eric Fulliard owns Daily Grind, just down the street from where the owner of Cork and Flame died on Wednesday. Kyriakos Voyajakis suffered what police say was a medical emergency after a fight with another person. And while his business has only been hit by a rash of petty crimes over the last couple of years, Fulliard sees the rise in violent crime all around him.
They're blindfolds on. I don't think they want to know how bad it is. When I talk about it, people cringe. I think it's about the public being told, and repeatedly, this is bad.
A suspect was taken into custody after that altercation at that restaurant, Cork and Flame. But police have not laid charges as they continue to investigate and await the results of an autopsy. The cousin of a First Nations woman whose remains are believed in a Winnipeg area landfill says it's time for the mayor to step up. Police say the bodies of Mercedes Myron and Morgan Harris are believed to be in the Prairie Green landfill. That's north of Winnipeg. A second feasibility report on the logistics of a landfill search was sent to all three levels of government yesterday. The families want the province and the federal government to fund the search, but Melissa Robinson, Harris's cousin, wants the city and the mayor to deliver on a promise made months ago. She says Scott Gillingham committed to setting aside land where a structure could be built to support a search.
He talks a good game. He needs to produce some land now. We finished the report. It's a matter of finding land now and then building structure so he can go ahead and produce something to us.
Gillingham's office says he has asked the city's public service to look for city lands that can be used near Prairie Green. A new development now in a story that shocked and saddened the country. 2 years ago, the Patel family, including their 11-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son, were found frozen to death on the Canada-U.S. border near Emerson. The family was trying to cross illegally in the middle of a bitter snowstorm. They were taken there by human smugglers. Since their deaths, there have been arrests in India, but so far, none in Canada. The Fifth Estate has tracked down one of the suspects Indian police say was there the night the Patels were taken to the border. CBC's Stephen D'Souza shows us where they found him.
Fennel Patel. He's wanted in India for culpable homicide and human trafficking. Indian police allege that he's part of the smuggling network that brought a family from India to a desolate section of the Manitoba-U.S. border to cross illegally into the U.S. in January 2022. That's where Jagdish Patel, his wife Vaishali, and their 2 children froze to death.
That's him? Yeah.
Where is he? He's going to pick up the bin. The Fifth Estate found him living just outside Toronto.
Indian police are accusing you of driving the Indian family, the Patel family, to the border. Did you drive them to the border, sir? Did you leave them out there to die? Did you drive them to the cold and leave them behind, sir?
He quickly turned and walked back into his house. Immigration lawyer Deepak Alawalia says there could be a number of reasons why the RCMP haven't arrested Fennel Patel.
RCMP may not have the actual minimum that they need to actually go ahead and charge this individual. The Indian authorities may still be collecting information.
The Fifth Estate contacted the RCMP about Fennel Patel. Their response? The investigation is progressing. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Toronto.
Search for the Smugglers airs tonight on the Fifth Estate on CBC Television, or you can also stream it on YouTube this afternoon, starting at noon Central. A new queen was crowned in Winnipeg last night. Local drag artist Ruby Chopsticks lip-syncing before being chosen as the first ever drag artist in residence by the Rainbow Resource Centre. The second-generation Vietnamese-Canadian has been performing since 2018 and says it meant a lot to even be considered for this position.
A lot of the time, we aren't looked at. We're just very much like either used as a tokenization, a token, a checklist, or we're just discarded. So being chosen as a top 3 was shocking to me.
The year-long position was created to help uplift drag performers in Winnipeg and celebrate drag as an art form. You can find more news updated throughout the morning. All you have to do is go to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Thanks to our live team, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, Heather Wells, Brad Lillies, Aaron Broman, and Megan Ketchison. All right, Abby, the weather.
We're looking at another mild day. The normal high is always supposed to be around -12, but we are stuck at -4 all day. We really haven't moved. The high for today is -2. That's all we have for now.
All right, that's all we need for now. And the drive or the roll or the walk.
Yeah, so far actually pretty solid drive this Friday morning. If you're on a bike though, look around the bike lanes. A little bit slushy. You might actually have to hop onto the road in a few spots, particularly on Balmoral. But other than that, overall pretty good. Use that window washer fluid if you got it.
All right, let's thank everyone in our unit here, in our current affairs unit that works on all of our live shows. Our associate producers, Wendy Parker, who also, by the way, has been the lead producer on our youth violence series. Thank you. Thank you to Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, Bruce Layden, Nolan Kaler, Chloe Friesen, Dylan Longhurst, Daniel Friesen, May McKillop, Jim Agapito, Issa Kixon, Chidi Akuma, Kalkadan Mulageta, Sierra Sanders, as well as our community reporter in unit, Shanali Vidal, weekend host in unit, Nadia Kidwai. Brad Lilly's with us this morning as well, and our leaders in the unit, Nellie Gonzalez is the show producer of our current affairs unit, and Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. That does it for us this Friday morning. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Appreciate having you along. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Have a wonderful weekend in Manitoba, or if you're traveling out and about, have a wonderful time with that as well. Lots going on around town. On Monday, Faith Lundell is going to be in, and I'm back with you again on Tuesday. Take care. The Current's next on CBC.
The fact the Patel family attempted to cross that evening was completely unnecessary and dangerous. I believe the person or persons that facilitated that trap